What's up, guys? Don't forget to smash that like button, drop a comment, hype up the video, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe and join the family. Guys, if you want to support the channel and get something cool, check the first link in the description. Use my code HugoHenriqueMore to get 10% off on anime lamps. Have you ever had a dream so strange? A beast so enormous it blocked the sun and darkened the sky? Yet it seemed like a cheerful spirit, as if they were the same being. The beast was him and he was the beast. From that moment on, the world would honor him as if he were a true god, because between heaven and earth, he was the most revered. The news on TV said that you are watching the nightly news on June 2nd, 2224. The Ning City Zoo was attacked by a snake over 100 meters long, and specialists couldn't determine the species. Several citizens managed to record the appearance of a giant beast resembling a whale in the sky north of the city, which caused quite a commotion. Recently, internationally wanted criminals have been on the loose in the city, and in front of the TV, a young man was lying unconscious, with his arm completely wounded on the table. In his subconscious, he began wondering if that body wasn't actually his, realizing something felt different, and when he looked in the mirror, he was shocked, questioning what was happening. Surprised to notice the body was completely different, he wondered if he had just turned into a marine iguana. His name is Chen Chu, a second-year student at Ning University, and he decided to rent a place outside the school because he didn't like living in the dorms. Chen Chu likes cold-blooded animals and is fascinated by vibrant colors, and the pet shop had received a new batch of exotic species that day, which immediately drew him to that marine iguana, an amphibious creature. Marine iguanas are usually docile, but an accident happened the moment it was released. It broke the protective glass, jumped onto his arm, and bit him. It bit him while staring straight at him, and with his phone he hit the iguana's head, making it let go, but it counterattacked by hitting his face with its tail. Back in the present, he started waking up and noticed the iguana staring at him again. He moved and the iguana raised its arms as if imitating him. Still confused, he asked what was going on and whether he could really control the lizard's body, because the sensation was the same as moving one of his own arms. With a smile on his face, he wondered if this was the so-called gold finger and if his hero's journey had finally begun. Chen Chu kept watching the lizard lying belly up, wondering what that iguana could do. Maybe he could live stream showing how intelligent his lizard was, or even sell freshly collected abalones or sea cucumbers. He held the lizard a bit discouraged, saying that maybe he wasn't born to be the main character of a story because when other people get advantages, they become powerful villains chosen by fate, or turn into a tree that grows and becomes the god of the universe, while he is stuck with a small lizard. Suddenly, both their stomachs growled at the same time, showing they were both hungry. In the middle of the night, he looked out the window saying he was starving since he didn't realize he had been passed out the whole day. But he didn't really know what a marine iguana ate, and when he looked at it, he thought that since it was a lizard, it would probably be fine eating just meat. He grabbed his pack of delicious steak and prepared a quick meal, and while the iguana was eating, he felt relieved and thought that was obvious, since marine iguanas and lizards can normally eat meat. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound and a screen appeared in front of him saying that after eating, his clone had received 5 evolution points, and its constitution had increased by 0.5. Chen Chu was confused, asking what that was, but the screen changed, showing his information. Name Chen Chu, Level 0, Constitution 8.5, Spirit 12, Talent Mind Control, Traits Beginner External Aura, Experience 0 of 1000, Beginner IQ Perception, Experience 0 of 1000, Skills Beginner Limb Boxing, Experience 48 of 100, Cloud Jump Beginner, Experience 66 of 100, Leaping Leg Beginner, Experience 39 of 100, Marine Iguana Cloning, Evolution 0 times, Evolution Points 5 of 200. He was surprised to see all those stats, wondering if that was really his cheat ability. He put his hand in front of the system screen and stared at it, remembering his past when he practiced, and his coach said that repeating the form without understanding the foundation was the same as learning nothing, because the root of strength starts in the feet, passes through the thighs, controls the abdomen, and takes shape through the bones of the fingers. With his body trembling and sweat rolling down his face, he looked at his father saying he was very tired and asked if he could take a break after standing on the stakes. But his father, extremely strict, said that would not happen because giving up halfway was cowardice. The young protagonist looks at himself and says he doesn't want to be a coward. He keeps pushing himself as hard as he can, running around the training ground while his father yells for him to run even faster until he trips on a rock, falls to the ground, and stays there breathing heavily, completely exhausted. His father approaches telling him to get up because no one will help him when he grows up. And sometime later, already inside the house, he gives him a box saying that inside it are all the savings he managed to gather, explaining that he needs to go on a very long journey and that the boy will have to walk the rest of the path alone. Chen-Chu gets emotional, but his father places a hand on his shoulder, telling him to never neglect martial arts practice because when he becomes strong enough, he will be able to see the other side of the world. Still shaken by the farewell, the protagonist asks how he will find him again, and the father replies that it will only happen when he becomes a grandmaster, but by then, he might not be around anymore. With those final words, he stands up, opens the door, and leaves, never to return. And looking at the photo of the two together from his childhood, the protagonist realizes an entire decade has passed. The marine iguana finishes its meal and starts wagging its tail excitedly, and he thinks that little creature eats really fast, but he notices something strange, and as he gets closer, he sees an unusual energy running through its body. He starts wondering if it's just his imagination, or if his new pet really grew a little. And the system screen appears again, showing that he now has 15 points after a single meal. He looks to the side and notices something different on his shirt, and when he lifts it, he's shocked to see defined abs, because his body had never been that strong before, and then he begins to understand that the points gained by the pet might directly affect his own body. That means the iguana can evolve for the first time if he gets more points, and maybe it could even become the behemoth of his dreams while he becomes a true grandmaster of martial arts. A little later at the market, the protagonist buys 4.5 kilos of boneless prime beef and 9 kilos of lean, boneless pork. The clerk says everything is packed and asks if he will pay with cash or QR code. He chooses QR code, and after paying, he goes to the car and stores all the groceries, saying that should be enough, then returns home preparing a beautiful meal. He takes a deep breath, thinking his pet needs to eat more, so it gets closer to becoming a true master of martial arts. And the iguana is fascinated staring at all that food. Sometime later, the iguana had already finished eating everything, and the protagonist thinks that for the lizard's taste, pork isn't as good as beef. He looks at the table saying the beef could use a little more cumin, and that he'll make sure to add more next time. The iguana starts walking across the table and goes to the window to sunbathe. Meanwhile, Chen-Chu takes the opportunity to go to the training room to check his progress. He focuses as much as possible, and after throwing a punch that almost destroys the punching bag, the system screen appears saying that after hard training, his limb boxing experience increased by 5 points. He observes his stats thinking his constitution has improved, even his training progress is faster than before, and 2 days later, the bag was already completely worn out, but the protagonist kept training, amazed by the feeling of getting stronger just through hard work. Excited, he kicks the punching bag, but his strength is already so great that he splits the bag in half and sends it flying, and when he looks at his stats, he sees that his constitution increased to 28 and his spirit to 16. Beginner external aura gained 10 experience points. IQ perception also increased by 10 points. Limb boxing is at 48 points, cloud jump at 66 points, and hopping kick at 39 points. He thinks that from the perspective of traditional martial arts, he is currently at the peak of the Ming realm. Chen-Chu remembers his father saying that the martial arts realms are divided into Ming, Dark, and Transformation. The peak of the Ming realm allows someone to become a high-level fighter capable of facing 10 opponents alone. The Dark realm makes someone a first-class expert able to fight 100 opponents at the same time, and usually these experts belong to legendary families, while the Transformation realm allows someone to face 1,000, with grandmasters recorded in history and extremely rare in modern times. The Transformation realm represents an unbreakable body described only in ancient texts. And excited about all of this, the protagonist asks his father which realm he is in. His father lowers his gaze, saying that once he briefly reached the Shadow Realm, and after that, Chen-Chu interrupts, impressed, saying he's really incredible and asking if he's also part of one of those legendary families. But when he hears the word families, the father seems a bit shocked and, taking a deep breath, says he is Luo Tuan. At the end of the day, Chen-Chu returns to the apartment and is surprised by the size of the pet, since it's already much bigger than before. And with a smile, he says that one more meal and it will be ready to evolve, hoping he won't be disappointed. The pet keeps eating while the protagonist watches. The experience points keep rising, and when they reach 100 and 99 out of 200, Chen-Chu thinks it's almost ready for evolution, and he can't wait to see how that little guy will change. Finally, the 200 points are reached. The system appears saying that the marine iguana clone has met the evolution requirements and that the evolution will begin immediately. Suddenly, sparks start appearing on the pet's arm, making it feel something strange. The same pain on the same arm begins to pass to Chen-Chu, and the two start screaming. The iguana's body begins to completely change, and spikes start emerging from its back. Its size and face also begin transforming. The pet loses control over its body and dashes at high speed, destroying everything in the apartment. Shortly after, the evolution seems to have come to an end. Still on the floor, Chen-Chu takes a deep breath, saying he didn't expect evolution to hurt that much. He looks to the side and with difficulty goes to the other room to see the iguana. And as soon as he gets there, he finds everything broken and the iguana standing still without moving. Excited, he says he wants to see how strong his little buddy has become after evolving and orders it to attack the punching bag. But the strike is so strong, it creates a very loud noise throughout the apartment. The protagonist is shocked, saying that after the evolution, the iguana gained extraordinary power. The system screen appears again. Name Chenchu, Level 0, Constitution 56, Spirit 18, Talent Mind Control, Traits Beginner External Aura with 20 points, Beginner IQ Perception with 20 points, Skills Intermediate Limb Boxing 48 points, Cloud Jump 66 points, Spring Kick 39 points, Marine Iguana Clone Evolution 1, Evolution Point 0 out of 1000. Chenchu is surprised because he didn't expect that with just one clone evolution, the physical strength and attributes of the main body would directly double in growth. However, he is still a bit confused because he doesn't know if it simply increased once or not since his current strength is still very weak, or if each time the clone evolves, his constitution doubles. An hour slips by without him noticing, and he says that if it's the first case, then his strength will improve at a reasonable pace at the start, but if by chance it's the second option, then it's terrifying to even think about. Chenchu starts analyzing everything around him, saying that by traditional martial arts standards, he has just entered the Dark Realm and activating the traits allows him to release external energy. He starts wondering if he is now officially a martial arts expert. However, even with his training, without daily experience points for his skills, this is the limit. He looks at the pet that is destroying everything around, thinking that since this improvement is sudden, to increase his body even more, he needs to rely on the marine iguana. But he notices that even the iguana can release external energy. While he contemplates the evolution, someone begins knocking very hard on the door. The protagonist goes there, and on the other side, a very irritated muscular man is waiting. As soon as the door opens and he asks what the man wants, the guy becomes completely terrified. A demonic aura comes out of the protagonist's body. Trembling with fear, the man starts wondering what is wrong with that boy because he is emanating vibrations that could crush him in seconds. He completely changes his attitude, saying that lately there has been a lot of noise upstairs and that's why he came to check, asking if the protagonist's place is under renovation. Chenchu gets a bit embarrassed and apologizes, saying there are no renovations being done. He was just training the last few days and didn't realize how much noise he was making. The man asks what kind of training sounds like an earthquake, and when he looks inside the apartment, he's shocked by the destruction, which scares him even more. He slowly begins stepping away, saying it's all good and there's no problem, only asking the protagonist to change his training methods to something a bit quieter. The man runs to the elevator and the protagonist says there's no problem and apologizes again for everything, saying he will adjust his methods from now on. The man thanks him for understanding, and as soon as the elevator door closes, Chenchu and the pet watch. Chenchu closes the door and keeps looking at the pet and the apartment while thinking that the marine iguana clone is way too big now and it's no longer appropriate to keep it indoors. So it's time to set it free. He grabs his car and drives to the shore saying everything is ready. He opens the door and it runs out while he just watches. And without hesitation, his pet dives. He activates Energy Sense, and with his current level, he can cover a 10-meter radius around him. As the iguana swims, the protagonist can feel and see everything it sees, becoming surprised when he notices a five-eyed fish. So he decides to make it his prey and orders the pet to attack. It increases speed and rushes into combat, causing a commotion in the water around it. The iguana kicks up some debris, blocking the fish's vision, and with that, it manages a stealth attack, finishing and consuming the creature. The system notifies that after the clone ate the mutant fish, it gained 10 evolution points and the protagonist's physique gained 1 more point. Chenchu is surprised, thinking that after evolution, eating normal food only gives 1 evolution point per meal, but eating mutant fish can give 10 points. He keeps swimming while thinking that with this kind of mutant creature appearing in the oceans and with recent news popping up everywhere, the world is far from peaceful. The protagonist takes advantage of the situation and continues devouring the mutant monsters appearing before him. Sometime later, the system notifies that the clone has reached the daily limit of 100 evolution points and cannot gain more. Even so, Chenchu keeps swimming because, to human eyes, the ocean at night is cold and completely dark. But through the eyes of the marine iguana clone, the underwater world is colorful and vibrant. As an amphibian, the marine iguana can stay submerged for a long time, but since it still has no gills, it depends on lungs to breathe, needing to surface from time to time. He keeps moving through the seafloor and observing everything around until he finds a small crack. Upon entering, he finds an underground cave and thinks that place seems very good, so he can let the marine iguana clone rest there. After cutting the mental connection, he takes a deep breath, saying that now the clone is already settled and it's time to go home. While driving down the roads, he notices something strange. An apparently abandoned house has a car parked in front. The protagonist becomes curious, wondering if someone is actually living there, but then he hears a cry for help from inside the house. He thinks he needs to control his abilities and act at the right moment. The thugs inside begin to worry, asking if the car has already left, but one of them, eating chips, says yes. They calm down, saying that's great, while another yells at the girl, covering her mouth and telling her to keep quiet. The bald man goes to the guy who was watching the girl and kicks him, asking how he could be so careless, because he told him to keep an eye on her and he didn't even notice the cloth gag fell from her mouth. The young man tries to explain to the boss that it was too dark outside and when they dragged her in he couldn't see anything. The boss keeps looking at the girl who is completely terrified and approaches, touching her neck, telling her to shut up and behave. The girl begins crying, not knowing what to do or say. Outside, Chenchu begins his preparations. He uses his energy sensibility and easily sees all the places and people inside the house. He sees two thugs sitting at the table, the girl trembling and tied up, while the other one just eats, leaning against the wall. Understanding their positions, he starts trying to figure out what is happening, if it could be a kidnapping or even human trafficking, since there are 3 men and 2 of them carry knives. Therefore, it's better to finish all of them in less than a minute to avoid putting the hostage in danger. He prepares for the fight, releases his external energy, and with a single punch blows the door apart, leaving everyone inside stunned. He uses the distraction from the smoke to move forward, and with a kick defeats one of the thugs, throwing him against the wall with great force. The boss becomes furious and tries to attack from behind with a knife, but the protagonist had already sensed it. His strike was so strong that when he hit the boss, the noise was enormous and the impact reached even his bones. The young man leaning against the wall holds the leader, telling him to rest a bit, and prepares for combat, saying it is time to use the Yue Wang Ning Fu fist. On the other hand, the protagonist uses Luo Tuan, the 8 extremities boxing. The two begin to fight. The boy tries to make the first strike, but the protagonist defends and tries to counterattack, being blocked and receiving a punch to the head. Immediately, he realizes that Guy is also an expert. Before completely losing his balance, he makes a distracting move and lands a direct hit, throwing the opponent far away. Lying on the ground, the boy smiles, finding everything more and more interesting, and begins to stand up, saying he really didn't expect to meet a true Luo Tuan 8 extremities disciple after coming down the mountain. The Iron Mountain Slam, the supreme move of the 8 extremities, truly deserves its reputation. Chenchu says it's all a shame, and the young man asks what he means by that. The protagonist gets closer, saying he didn't expect to see a bandit being a descendant of the Yue Wang fist, and that it's shameful for a martial arts disciple to follow a path like that. The boy smiles and asks why Chenchu is so arrogant, when he's nothing more than a simple student who knows nothing, because he only understood reality after leaving the mountain. Shouting that to survive in that world you must do whatever it takes, he charges forward. The protagonist watches, and when the opponent is just a few centimeters away from striking him, he simply kicks him and sends him flying, making him fall face first into the floor. While the boy is on the ground, Chenchu observes carefully and thinks that battles between martial artists are truly dangerous because the pressure he feels from his opponent is greater than that of dozens of muscular men. Bothered, he starts recalling the strikes he threw and, looking at his own hand, thinks it's a shame he still doesn't have full control over his strength, because things don't look good for those 3 people, and from now on he needs to learn to control his power better before seriously hurting someone. The girl tied in the corner tries to scream, calling his attention. He quickly goes to her and frees her, telling her she doesn't need to be afraid anymore because everything is okay now. Still overwhelmed by terror, she grabs him without thinking twice, crying and thanking him for what he did. With a sincere look, he tells her to wipe her tears and says she can call the police as soon as he leaves. He hands her his phone and says he needs a small favor. If the police ask about him, she should say she didn't see him clearly and doesn't know who he is. The girl agrees, promising she won't say anything. 10 minutes later, the police arrive. When they break into the house, they shout for the girl not to move and raise her hands. But once they light the place with their flashlights, they're surprised to see everyone lying on the ground and only she still standing. At the station, security agent Guan Qing enters the room, telling the deputy chief that all the requested information is there. She explains they found clear footprints on the broken door and, based on the depth and the way the hinge snapped, someone kicked it from the front. The door flew about 3 meters and the force applied was at least 1,000 kilos. The deputy chief places the images on the table, saying that among the kidnappers, 2 died instantly, and the rest entered a vegetative state after suffering severe concussions. According to the girl Lin Rongye, the one who did that was wearing a mask, and since it was night, she couldn't see his face. The agency chief remains confused, saying this makes no sense, because the greatest impact ever recorded by the Boxing King was 800 kilos on a machine, and achieving something that absurd in real life is unheard of. Guan agrees, saying that Guy's strength is truly inhuman, although even stranger things have happened lately. Suddenly, strong lightning cuts through the sky and the deputy chief comments that a major storm is coming. Meanwhile, in a remote area near the river, the protagonist observes a boat with some people. Three men get off the vessel and one complains to the boss, saying he just earned money and already wasted $1 million on the bald tiger's woman, asking if that isn't a waste. The shirtless man agrees, reminding him they took a long time to find the sunken ship and only profited a little over $2 million. But the boss says they're exaggerating and asks if they even know who that woman is. If they manage to put her in his hands, money won't be a problem. The two get excited and ask if that's true, but the boss changes the subject and asks Four Eyes if he has already dealt with the business with the company. The boy replies yes. He already hired a transport company, rented a high-end commercial building for the offices, and even activated a recruiting agency to find the prettiest girls for the secretary and receptionist positions, just as the boss requested. The leader emphasizes that with his newly awakened ability to breathe underwater, all they need to do is locate any sunken ship to bring treasures to the surface. If they can do that, they'll have all the money they want and no one will go hungry again. While they talk, something moves in the nearby bushes. The boss immediately turns around asking who is there. The protagonist appears, saying he has seen many perverts, but that guy really stands out. Irritated, the boss charges forward, saying Chenchu is too bold and people like him don't live long. But the protagonist simply stomps the ground with force, causing an explosion that throws the boss upward. Taking advantage of the opening, he disarms him and finishes with a kick that sends him crashing into a tree. The two underlings scream that it's impossible, saying the boss became much faster and stronger after awakening his superpower and can easily defeat 5 men. Four Eyes, panicking, says that's really bad and they need to run away immediately. But before they can take a single step, both are knocked out by the protagonist. The boss, badly injured, screams asking what Chenchu is doing, and the protagonist tells him to look straight at him, thinking he can now test his mental control power. He asks the man's name and what he is doing. Mental control activates instantly, and the man starts moving strangely, saying his name is Zhang Chang Shou and that he owns a boat and smuggles to survive. A month ago, he gained the superpower to breathe underwater. Chenchu thinks his mental control is extremely effective because that man is now practically a puppet under his command. Chang Shou continues explaining that he scavenges sunken ships in the depths and trades whatever treasures he finds for money with wealthy people. After getting all the information, the protagonist cancels the mental control, and Chang Shou collapses on the ground, crying out in pain and calling Chenchu boss, asking what happened to his hand. The protagonist replies that he broke it himself by accident. Chang Shou keeps treating Chenchu as his boss and says he is right. The protagonist is surprised to realize his mental control also affects people's judgment. He tells Chang Shou to rest a bit on the boat because he will go there after waking the other two. The man agrees immediately. Chenchu thinks that to raise his lizard, he will need a huge amount of food. And since Chang Shou has a boat and deals with rich people, maybe he can get money through his company to feed his pet. Without wasting time, the protagonist uses mental control on the other two and concludes that his power truly is amazing. However, there was some resistance when controlling Chang Shou, but with those two it was very easy, and apparently his mental control works better on weak-minded people. Shortly after, already inside the ship, they walk down the corridor when a crew member asks Chang Shou who the man with him is. Chang Shou, a bit irritated, says that is his boss and demands respect. The crew member immediately greets the new boss and Chang Shou orders him to prepare the transfer contract because that ship now belongs to his boss. The contract is quickly prepared and handed to the protagonist. Chenchu tells the man in glasses to meet him at the office the next day and calls boss Chang Shou to go with him to the hospital since he is injured. The next day, the iguana was at the bottom of the sea eating again, and the protagonist thinks the ocean is a paradise of infinite food. While his pet eats, he continues training at the gym. The system keeps notifying him that evolution points are rising, plus 5 points, and constitution increases another 0.5. He thinks he can't depend only on the marine iguana to increase his power, and must train as much as possible. And after his 2 fights, he realizes his control over his own strength has improved a lot. In the mountain cave, the iguana is also excited, and the system says the energy absorbed was digested during training, giving it 6 more evolution points. In the city center, in front of a building, the protagonist watches his subordinate saying goodbye and asking him to take care. He thinks the transfer process is complete and that even without leaving home for an entire day, he gained over 90 evolution points and his body grew 20 centimeters. Tomorrow, he must make the lizard's journey into the depths of the sea because he's not the only person with superpowers in that world and therefore needs to become even stronger, especially because there are unknown creatures in the deep ocean. In the middle of the sea, the 2 subordinates were on board a ship. The shirtless man says There have been far fewer fish in recent days and they aren't catching anything. Four Eyes comments that maybe there is a school of big fish down there, maybe even sharks, because they move in groups and even orcas need to be careful with them. Indeed, some sharks were below the water hunting everything that came near. Suddenly, the protagonist lizard begins approaching one of them and lunges to bite. The iguana dodges the attack and starts eating the shark. The system notifies that it gained 10 evolution points, and the protagonist thinks that great white shark meat is quite tender. After the iguana finishes feeding on the shark, the system informs that the clone has met the evolution requirements and asks if they want to evolve. Chenchu is surprised to see he can choose even from a distance, and without hesitation confirms, triggering both evolutions immediately. After going through the pain of evolution, the status screen appears again saying, Name Chenchu, Level 1. Constitution, 130. Spirit, 38. Talent, Mental Control. Traits, External Aura, Beginner. Experience 280 of 1,000. Chi Perception, Beginner. Experience 280 of 1,000. Skills, 8 Extremities Boxing. Intermediate, experience 370 of 1,000. Cloud Step Leap, Intermediate, experience 290 of 1,000. Tan Leg Technique, Intermediate, experience 390 of 1,000. Clone, Armored Scale Spiny Lizard, a newborn beast attempting to evolve into a fierce Lord-class beast. Evolution, twice. Evolution points, 0 of 5,000. Skill, Water Affinity. Lying on the floor, he looks at his stats, saying he finally made a breakthrough, and that his constitution is 13 times that of a normal person. Also, he has reached a level equivalent to a grand achievement in the dark realm of ancient martial arts. He also notices that his constitution didn't double this time after evolving, which makes sense because last time it doubled only because his base attribute was extremely low. He keeps checking the new updates, and when looking more closely at his pet's attributes, he sees it has the water affinity skill and wonders what that means. When he connects to his clone, he's shocked to see that his pet became extremely large, its bone density several times higher than before, and its weight reaching 4 or 5 tons. On top of that, its power has doubled. Its claws look like steel and are far more explosive than before. The protagonist also notices it can now swim up to 70 kilometers per hour faster than a large ship, and it makes less noise and feels less resistance while swimming, probably thanks to the water affinity. Inside the apartment, Chen Chu calls his team asking if anyone requested treasures recently, but his employees say no. The protagonist says that's not a problem because they'll find them themselves, and asks how the research is going. The man replies they were able to locate some points with sunken ships, but without Changsho, who can breathe underwater, they can't advance. Chen Chu tells him not to worry because he'll handle it. After hanging up the phone, the protagonist thinks that the shallow water areas of the routes used by Country Z in the past and the major trade routes used by Country H and Country R have already been mostly explored. Even so, there are still many priceless ships in the deep sea area. He connects again with the pet, which is in the Yellow Sea area, southeast, around 25 kilometers from the coast, and thinks that now it can breathe deeply in the water after that evolution. Its perception also increased greatly, allowing it to sense an area of up to 20 kilometers around, and he will be ready to depart as soon as he organizes everything. He stretches on the couch saying that this is the point of having a clone, being able to enjoy life. And when he checks his phone, he sees it's almost 11 o'clock. So he decides to get something to eat and treat himself. Somewhere on the pedestrian street, a girl was unconscious leaning against a pole. Sometime later, the protagonist goes to the street and, seeing the food stands, is impressed because they look delicious. But one meal costs more than 3,000, and his savings are only 20,000 for now. Still, soon he will take over Changsho's company, so he will at least get to experience being rich. While walking, he comes across a somewhat infuriating scene. 2 young men approaching the unconscious girl leaning against the pole. He yells, asking what they are looking at, and tells them to leave immediately, thinking that with his growing strength, his passion for martial arts is awakening too. And as long as there is no real danger, he doesn't mind stepping in. The 2 get annoyed and ask what the protagonist just said. And with a knife in hand, one of them says that if Chen Chu leaves right now, he will pretend he saw nothing. The protagonist begins releasing his aura, which takes the form of a beast, and the 2 become terrified. The boy in the hoodie asks why it feels like a beast is staring at him. The other, frightened, says they should leave, but the unconscious girl wakes up and starts laughing, asking what they are doing and if they aren't real men since they're so scared, continuing to mock them. Chen Chu gets confused and wonders if that woman is crazy. The guy in the hoodie thinks a woman like that isn't something you find every day. The guy with the knife, with his masculinity wounded, says he can't let a woman think he's weak. The 2 start running, saying there's no reason to fear that guy because he's just an ordinary person. The one with the knife charges faster, saying that's right. that the young man is too confident and will be defeated right there and now. Chenchu simply watches them, and as soon as they get close enough, the protagonist attacks and defeats both with a single kick. He thinks he didn't even use 10% of his strength, because otherwise that kick could have reduced the two of them. And right after that, the guys start running away saying the protagonist is terrifying, a demon straight from hell. Chenchu simply watches them leave, thinking that this time he'll let them run, because they messed up, but not enough to deserve death. The woman stands up acting strangely and laughing, saying that was amazing, praising the protagonist and saying he is very strong and that it was impressive. Chenchu notices she isn't normal and wonders if she was drugged. The woman begins rubbing herself on him, and the protagonist calls the police saying there's a slightly drunk and out-of-control woman outside the Shengtang bar. The girl asks why he called the police, questioning if she isn't pretty and if he wouldn't want to take her home. A few minutes later, the police arrive, and a policewoman says the woman isn't being funny doing this kind of thing, while the protagonist talks to another officer, saying he was the one who called because he went out for a late-night snack and saw the woman there. After settling everything with the police, he thinks that now he can control the giant lizard and search for the sunken ship. And when he uses the probe to sense the surroundings, he realizes that Four Eyes was right, because online information confirmed that there is indeed a sunken ship there. At the moment, his energy sense reaches only about 20 meters, so he needs to keep searching. Shortly after, he finally finds what he had been looking for and says that it seems he won the lottery because the bars are solid gold. Immediately, he contacts Four Eyes and tells him to guide the ship 3 kilometers east and drop a container. The guy from before calls the crew member Black Ghost and wonders if anyone besides Changsho can breathe underwater, but Black Ghost just tells him to stop asking questions and not interfere with the new boss's secrets. Underwater, the pet had already placed numerous gold bars inside the container, and the protagonist says they can start retrieving the site. The container is closed and lifted to the surface. While it's being taken up, the protagonist decides to take one last look around and suddenly finds something strange that looks like a piece of metal. Black Ghost says the cargo is already aboard and everyone can return. Chenchu uses the lizard to try identifying what it is, but when he tries to scratch it, he notices it's extremely tough because the claws of his pet can easily tear through common metal, but barely leave a mark on that thing, so it must be some kind of special alloy. He decides to take it because it might be valuable and he'll study it later. As the lizard returns, something suddenly rushes at it and bites by surprise. Chenchu asks what that thing is because a monster is trying to ambush him. He wonders what that monster thinks it is because even if it's bigger than his pet, when it comes to strength, attack, and defense, unfortunately the two can't compare. In just a few minutes only, the monster's bones remain at the bottom of the sea. The lizard begins moving away and the protagonist thinks that sashimi tastes really good. A few hours later, the protagonist is on the shore thinking that the reefs have been eroded by water for years, making them incredibly hard. The deserted night beach is the perfect place for him to test his strength. That strength works both ways, but his bone density is almost 20 times greater than that of an average human. And with the inner shield absorbing most of the impact, he barely feels pain in his hands, even when punching the rock with force. And even the little pain he does feel is eliminated almost instantly thanks to his body's recovery ability. He keeps training on the rock with light punches while thinking that, after all this evolution, his physique surpassed 200 points, and even without testing, his punch should weigh at least 3,000 pounds, which is 1.5 tons. And with the increase in external energy and the 8 extremities boxing technique, he could easily pierce through a person with a single punch. He decides to test his strength a bit more and throws a powerful punch at the rock, breaking it with ease. After training for a long time, he throws himself on the ground a bit tired, thinking that the punching bag he has at home isn't strong enough. Besides, he can't train in the park because with all the modern technology, if someone recorded it and posted it online, it would be a huge problem, since if people discovered he was extraordinarily strong, he would only attract more trouble. That's why he can only train on that empty beach. Looking at his hands, he comments that this is great because his incredible regenerative ability managed to heal the injuries in less than a minute. Suddenly, his pet emerges from the sea carrying that strange thing, and the protagonist starts examining it, thinking that the irregular black ore shines with a metallic gleam, but doesn't look especially remarkable at first glance. He tries to lift that stone but realizes that piece of metal weighs at least 90 kilos, and besides being heavy, it's extremely tough, to the point that even the giant lizard's claws have trouble scratching it. This would be perfect for forging a weapon, however. With his current skills, making something suitable would be extremely difficult, but what he really needs to focus on now is how to deal with those gold bars. The next day, the protagonist goes to the ship and asks where the goods are. Black Ghost says everything is inside the ship and has already been cleaned and stored in the captain's cabin. The protagonist is evaluating the gold bars when Black Ghost asks how much all that is worth because he has never seen so many gold bars together in his life. The protagonist explains that the bars don't have any kind of markings, so they must have been privately minted and cannot be sold as antiques. He goes to the city center, and upon reaching the 8th floor, the receptionist greets him warmly. Chen-Chu asks if they buy gold there. The receptionist says yes and asks if he wants to sell rings or necklaces, but he opens the bag full of gold bars and says he wants to sell that. The receptionist is shocked, saying that is a lot of gold, and asks him to come with her because she will take him to the manager upstairs. The manager greets him, asks for his name and how much gold he wants to sell. The protagonist introduces himself, opens the bag again, and says he would like to sell everything. The manager is also surprised but says he needs the team to check the gold quality, so he will have to wait a bit. While they analyze, the protagonist just sits and waits. After assessing and weighing everything, the manager returns saying the bars total 11 kilos and 250 grams, and since they aren't very pure and were privately minted, they can pay 400 yuan per gram, asking if he accepts. Chen-Chu smiles and says it's a good price. Shortly after 4.5 million are deposited into his account, and as he drives through the streets, he watches the people around, thinking that normally people his age are still struggling to pay for college while he can earn millions with just one adventure. Something that feels surreal. Now that he is a millionaire, he thinks he should buy a car first because the one he currently has is too low and terrible on the hole-filled coastal roads. He goes to the luxury car showroom and starts looking at a Land Rover. Two other people enter the store and another receptionist greets them, while the protagonist watches the scene and realizes that's his ex. Since back then, he spent a fortune trying to win her over, but she preferred chasing wealth and status, enjoying life with rich guys. She notices him too and tells her boyfriend that he's the loser who used to chase her. The boyfriend asks what a broke college student is doing in a luxury car dealership. Black Ghost gets irritated asking who they're calling poor, but Chen-Chu steps in and tells him not to bother. The ex's boyfriend shouts back asking why they can't just tell the truth, saying the protagonist is nothing but a poor college student and questioning what he's doing in a place like that. The girl tells her boyfriend not to waste time with that loser and to go pick a car. She walks over to a convertible saying she likes that model, and the boyfriend answers he'll take a look, but inside he feels embarrassed thinking that money exists to impress women. But he only receives a few tens of thousands per month to spend, so how could he ever buy her a luxury car? Meanwhile, another saleswoman is showing the Land Rover to the protagonist. He thinks that the car is tall, comfortable, and can carry a lot, so it should meet all his needs. He tells the saleswoman that he likes the car and will pay with his card. She smiles and says he made an excellent choice, explaining that the car costs 2,380,000 and asking whether he wants to pay in full or in installments. He replies that he will pay in full, surprising the saleswoman. His ex-girlfriend hears that and is stunned, asking how he plans to pay for a car worth more than 2 million with a card. Her boyfriend walks over saying he's just pretending because there's no way he has more than 2 million in his account. She agrees and mocks him, saying that back when they were together, he didn't have money to buy anything besides instant noodles for weeks just to try to impress her. The two get closer and the man starts laughing at him, saying a broke student wants to buy a luxury car and telling him he doesn't need to put on a show because it would be embarrassing if the card gets declined. Black Ghost steps in saying it's none of their business, whether the protagonist can pay or not, and asks what the guy will do if he actually buys the car. The young man replies that if by any chance he really manages to pay, then he will call him dad right there on the spot. But if he can't, then the protagonist will have to call him dad instead. The ex continues feeling superior, convinced he's just bluffing to impress her. Suddenly, the saleswoman returns with the keys and the card, saying the car now belongs to him. The protagonist thanks her, leaving everyone shocked. The man asks if he really bought a car worth more than 2 million in cash, and his ex is completely dumbfounded, demanding to know how he became so rich. Black Ghost grabs the man by the shirt, demanding that he keep his promise, and asking if he isn't going to call the boss dad. Chen-Chu tells Four Eyes to stop wasting time with people like them. The saleswoman remains mesmerized, and Black Ghost says they're lucky the boss is so gentle because if it were up to him, neither of them would leave before doing what they said. Chen-Chu gets into his new car and his ex starts running after him, shouting and begging him to listen to what she has to say. The two saleswomen watch the pathetic scene, commenting that the girl thought she had found a rich man but ended up losing someone with real potential. The other agrees, saying people only realize the value of things after they've truly lost them. A short time later at Claude's Edge restaurant, the best place in the city for dinner with sophisticated service, the protagonist walks in together with his subordinate. A woman sits beside him asking what he would like to order, and Chen-Chu asks her for a Boston lobster costing 5,888 yuans and 2 king crabs costing 7,888 yuans. Shortly after, the food arrives and 2 girls start feeding him. All of that is very expensive, but it is definitely worth it because it tastes great. The girls keep smiling and asking where he wants his next bite from. Chenchu keeps enjoying that moment, thinking that he has cooked many meals for his lizard, and now it is time to enjoy a bit of a luxurious life. He looks at his tablet and sees that the advisor had sent a message in the group saying that classes would start in 1 week, so they need to remember to arrive at school on time. Some students say they understood, and the protagonist sends a message saying it is true because he had forgotten he was already in the second year. He opens his status panel and keeps looking, while thinking that as soon as classes start, he will have less time, so he needs to make more money as quickly as possible to help his little lizard reach the Shadow Realm. The protagonist connects with his lizard, thinking that the swordfish in front of him is the fastest swimmer among the fish and can reach speeds of up to 60 miles per hour, which is about 90 kilometers per hour. However, he is already faster than that. He manages to hunt a fish, and while eating, he thinks that sailfish is really delicious, and that as soon as he is satisfied, it will be time to resume treasure hunting. While he eats, his evolution points keep rising. As soon as he finishes eating, he starts searching because, by expanding his senses, he can detect things dozens of kilometers away, but unfortunately, even after combing the entire seabed, he couldn't find any shipwreck, and some days have already passed without any results. He keeps swimming searching for things, but the world is beginning to change in strange ways, making him question whether there is some type of secret supernatural organization commanded by the government, because either way now he has these abilities and needs to be even more cautious with his actions. He goes to the high-end commercial building in City N, thinking that after Changsho transferred the company to his name, he never returned there even once, because that is the busiest area of the city, and that alone shows that Changsho really did everything to leave the company with a good appearance. As soon as they enter Tianlan Marine Industries, the receptionist Ning is happy to see assistant Zhang Shu, and he asks her to call everyone to the boss's office right now. Shortly after, in the boss's office, the assistant introduces the protagonist, saying that he is the real head of the company, and his name is Chen Chu, Mr. Chen. Everyone there greets the boss, and the girls become completely enchanted, thinking if he is really the boss because he is very young, handsome, and rich. An assistant calls the protagonist, saying that girl is Ning Nixon, the receptionist. A bit happy, with a reddish face, she smiles, greeting the new boss. Another beautiful woman starts approaching, saying she brought his coffee, and the assistant introduces her, saying that woman is the boss's secretary and her name is Su Lengyu. While looking at some documents, the protagonist asks her to leave the coffee on the table. While his secretary serves the coffee, he keeps observing, thinking that even though it is just a front company, it is surprisingly well equipped, and it costs hundreds of thousands to maintain that company every month, and apparently he needs to find more shipwreck treasures. Chen Chu calls Zhang Shu, saying he would like to end the introduction meeting there, and that he can ask everyone to return to work. Besides that, he asks his assistant to return immediately to the ship and keep an eye on things, at least for now. As he leaves the room, the protagonist remains seated, thinking that apparently the effect of the mind control is stable, but subconscious hypnosis is not foolproof, and that is why he needs to ensure they don't interact too much with the outside world. While holding his cup of coffee, he goes to the office window and the system keeps notifying that he is gaining constitution points. He thinks that using clones to hunt while he just lies down and still gets stronger is truly incredible. Deep in the sea, the lizard keeps hunting, growing stronger and stronger. While hunting, the protagonist connects once again with his pet and asks if that is a barracuda, because barracudas are only about 2 meters long, but that one is 4 to 5 meters. Its speed is also incredible, and its teeth are harder than steel. And if it weren't for his external force field, he might have gotten hurt, which only shows that the number of mutant and aggressive fish in the ocean is increasing even more. While the lizard tries to eat that monster, the protagonist notices that the meat is clearly different, as it provides much more energy. The system notifies that his clone devours it with effort and gains 90 evolution points and 9 constitution points. He notices something different and thinks something is wrong, because that fish definitely has something in common, since right now his muscles and bones are strengthening, and the increase is 10 times greater than it used to be. After finishing eating, the lizard keeps swimming, while the protagonist thinks it really is a shame because in such a vast ocean that mutant fish seems to be the only one of its kind. Meanwhile, at the Tianlan Marine Industry office, Ning asks Leng Yue if she thinks the boss has someone special. She sits on the desk asking why and if she's thinking of hitting on him. The other woman behind looks at the receptionist, saying she's blushing again. Suddenly, someone arrives asking if they still haven't finished work hours, and everyone is surprised to see that it is Chen Chu. Secretary Leng Yue walks up to him, saying they still have some things to finish. The protagonist starts getting ready, thinking that with his hearing, he can hear their conversation from inside the elevator. But to avoid embarrassment, he will pretend he didn't hear anything. He says that it seems they are all working very hard, and because of that, dinner will be on him. They all get excited and thank the boss for that. A short time later, they arrive at the Above the Clouds restaurant. A waitress approaches, asking if he would like to place the order immediately. The girls were watching all of that, and Ning thinks that her boss's car is a luxury vehicle worth more than 2 million, which is impressive. The other girl thinks that this restaurant is very extravagant. After making all the orders, the receptionist says the total was 48,888, and he just hands over the card asking her to charge everything there. A few minutes later, the food is served at the table, and the three are completely impressed. Ning starts wondering from which rich family her boss came. Lung Yue, also impressed, thinks that the boss is simply throwing money everywhere. The other girl is also amazed, thinking that following a boss like that surely means there is a bright future ahead. Before they start eating, the protagonist says he still needs to take care of some things that night, and because of that, after dinner, he will take them all back. The three smile, excited, and thank him. After dinner, he goes back to the seaside and starts training, thinking that the sea breeze is so relaxing that it really lifts his mood. During the night, on a rocky, deserted beach, he didn't stop training the whole time, and now his physique is more than 20 times that of a normal person, and the strength of his punch exceeds 2 tons. However, the stronger he becomes, the harder it is to control. He punches the rock using too much force and complains because his stance was not fully correct, and that is why he ended up losing control and needs to keep training to get used to his true strength. But he notices something strange when he realizes that even so late at night, there are still some people in such an isolated place. A buyer shows up saying that they have done so many deals already and still they don't trust him. The seller says the pressure is too great right now and the rules are still the same. First the money, then the goods. Chen Chu hides behind a rock thinking this is a D-level deal, but those guys are armed, and so he needs to be cautious. One of the subordinates goes to the boss saying the goods are top quality. The buyer says that is not bad at all and that it is a pleasure doing business with them. The seller also thanks him, saying the pleasure is all his. The man warns that things have been tight lately and so they need to be careful. But another guy tells his boss not to worry because they only work through exclusive channels. And even if something goes wrong with the goods, it won't be traceable. Suddenly, the protagonist jumps toward them and quickly takes down the two guys. The buyer gets scared and steps back, pulling out his gun. But the protagonist's speed is so great that before he could aim, Chen Chu had already gotten close enough to end it. With the 3 people on the ground, he thinks those people have already lost all humanity, and eliminating them is practically a public service. His pet starts approaching and with a single attack manages to split the boat in half, and people start falling into the sea asking if they hit something big or what might be happening. As soon as they fall into the water, they notice something is close to them and begin to panic, shouting that there is a monster there and that they need to swim as fast as possible. Some start calling the boss for help. One of the thugs pulls out his gun, saying it is impossible to escape through the sea, so they need to go all out because he wants to see that monster dodge a bullet. As soon as he fires and hits the monster, he cannot believe what he just saw. With his body trembling in fear, the shot didn't cause a single scratch on that beast. The pet keeps attacking until it wipes out all those thugs. After finishing the job, it carries the briefcase to the beach. Sometime later in Chen Chu's room, he sees the briefcase was full of money, and a stack of bills is worth 10,000, and 3 million are 300 stacks. He thinks that money spread right in front of him feels much more real than just numbers on a bank card. The next morning, at a cafe, Lung Yue arrives with some documents in hand, heading toward the protagonist, and the men sitting at the table keep looking at her, saying she is a stunning woman because she gives off a cold, untouchable vibe. When she reaches the table, she asks her boss to sign them, and the 2 young men at the next table are impressed, wondering if that really is that woman's boss because he looks so young. After signing the contracts, the protagonist stands up, asking Lung Yue to inform everyone that it is time for a meeting. The 2 men keep observing, thinking that even though he is young, he seems unshakable like a mountain, and his presence is completely intimidating. Sometime later in the meeting room, the protagonist asks them to take good care of every little detail, and if they do so, they will be the heroes of the company. Because if performance keeps rising like this, at the end of the year, everyone will receive a big bonus. In the middle of the meeting, his phone rings and someone says that today is the last day for him to register at school because he is the only person still missing from the class. He apologizes, saying he will go there right now, and Lung Yue brings his coat. The protagonist says he needs to go register at school and that there is not much left for them to do there today, so everyone can leave work early. Furthermore, while he is not there, Su Lengyue will be responsible for taking care of all company matters. Ning is surprised to find out that her boss is still a student, and the girl next to her comments that he seems so focused she thought he was some rich heir raised with perfect etiquette. Shortly after, at the university campus, the protagonist arrives with a new car, and everyone around is impressed, asking if he is Chen Chu and if he is really a rich guy because that car is worth more than 2 million. Some people cannot believe he owns a car of that value. Later on the campus forum, a back-to-school post was pinned, saying that on the last day of enrollment for new students, a tall, handsome, and elegant guy showed up driving a car worth more than 2 million. Shares 748, comments 2,822. In the comments, people were asking if he was Chen Chu because he looked very handsome in the summer. However, others said they didn't care about looks since he was driving a car worth more than 2 million, and his family surely must be billionaire. The girl reading the post feels that man is very familiar, especially those black and white eyes like stars radiating a sharp glow. She keeps reading and sees someone saying that guy is not a freshman because he is in the second year of the finance department and is now entering the third, and his name is Chen Chu. The girl is surprised to discover he is from the finance department because that cannot be true since he is in the same year as her. While walking, the protagonist thinks that his body and strength are improving at a very good speed, but he only knows light extremities cloud step and tan leg technique, and needs to learn new skills to better control and use his current power. He passes by a fight club but thinks those moves are too graceful, and if he fought someone like that, he would end up crushing the person with a single slap. So if he really wants to learn how to control everything, he needs to keep training alone. He arrives at Longteng Steel and upon meeting the receptionist, says he would like to make a custom steel order around 100 tons or more. The woman agrees and takes him to the VIP room to call the sales manager. Once inside, the manager asks what type of steel he wants to order, and Chen Chu explains that he wants a steel pillar with 2 meters in diameter and 5 meters in height, as well as some steel blocks weighing 1, 5, 10, and 20 tons each. After the simulation, the manager informs that the total weight is around 200 tons and the estimated cost is about 700,000, but the final price depends on the product finishing. The protagonist says it's all good and asks to sign the contract the next morning. At Changshou's improvised dock, assistant Zhang Shu informs the boss that the entire area is his warehouse. The protagonist thinks it's great and asks him to leave because he wants to take a look by himself. The system notifies that the clone gained 8 evolution points through directed feeding, and that constitution increased by 0.8. He thinks about all the stages: brightness, darkness, transformation, and beyond transformation. But he hasn't even reached the transformation stage yet, so he still has a long way to go. Looking at the space, he imagines that when the steel pillar is installed in the warehouse, that will be his training field. However, he thinks the maximum daily evolution points is 100, and because of that, he will need many days. And compared to the progress of that giant lizard, his body is still far too slow. At the site of the last fight, Guan Qing and the deputy security chief were analyzing everything together with the police. She starts reading the report, saying that Luo Hao, known as Big Boss Luo in the underworld, owns a bar and commands more than a dozen henchmen. His right hand was almost torn off by a heavy weapon, used with unbelievable force, hanging only by a piece of flesh. Iron Chi Lao had his chest hit with immense force, crushing his organs and dying on the spot. All three were killed in less than a minute by the same person, whose strength and speed were insane. She wonders who could do such a thing when the captain's radio rings saying they found another body coming from the sea. Meanwhile, at Tianlan Maritime Company, Leng Yue comments to the boss that the company has no services. Everyone just slacks off, and she asks if they shouldn't hand out flyers or something like that. The protagonist replies that it's not necessary because business is like fishing. You just need to wait for the fish to bite the bait. The secretary gets worried, thinking that even if the boss is very rich, they might end up going bankrupt. After all, how will the fish bite if no one knows about the bait and no one reaches them? Suddenly, Ning knocks on the door saying someone came to see the boss with a business deal. Leng Yu can't believe someone actually came to bring money in the end. The man enters the office looking around and asking where Zhang Laoda is, and the protagonist says he and his men are all under his command now. The man finds it impressive that he actually sidelined that guy and introduces himself as Wang Tianhua. The protagonist is impressed, saying he finally met boss Wang and that they should sit down to talk more calmly. Leng Yue says she will prepare tea for everyone. Tianhua explains that there is a centuries-old shipwreck worth at least tens of millions and asks if the protagonist can make it happen. Chen Chu asks how Tianhua intends to split things once the items are recovered, and he answers that he will provide the map and keep 70%, while Chen Chu would get 30%, because even international teams work at that rate. Chen Chu says that if that's the case, he should look for an international team. Tianhua asks what his suggestion would be, and Chen Chu replies that he would like a 50-50 deal. Otherwise, it's better to forget it. Tianhua is surprised, imagining that with such strict laws, a private salvage is impossible, and the protagonist is his only chance. He stands up asking if Chen Chu is sure he can take everything from there. Chen Chu states that just like Chang Shou, he has many others under his command. And if Tianhua is not convinced, he can go along and see with his own eyes. Tianhua ends up agreeing to the 50% deal and they shake hands, saying it's a pleasure doing business together. Meanwhile, at the police station, the deputy chief was impressed with the exaggerated claw marks, wondering what kind of creature could leave marks that large. He begins to consider whether it could be some abnormal creature and analyzes the records indicating multiple deaths. 4 died at sea, suspected of beast attacks, and professionals would investigate. At the end of the day, Chen Chu goes to the warehouse to receive the order and Leng Yue asks what that huge iron pillar is for. He says it is a calming pillar of the sea, buried at the dock to stabilize the waters and restrain the sea dragon kings. She thinks the boss really knows a lot of things. After making the payment, he looks at the bank account balance, which was at 321,800, and thinks money really flies. And now, only that is left in the Bixi Garden complex. Chen Chu drops off the secretary and she follows him, apologizing for bothering him again and asking if he would like to go up for a glass of water, but he refuses, saying he still needs to take care of other things. She says it is fine, and as he walks away she keeps watching and wonders how she managed to be bold enough to say something like that to him, especially knowing that even her underwear must be lying around there. While driving, he thinks that during dinner earlier he accidentally broke the chopsticks, so he still needs to train his control over his own strength. That is the key point. During the night, he goes back to training on the rocks, thinking he needs to reach full mastery to completely use his powers. He focuses and notices that his aura shield now covers an area of up to 30 meters, allowing him to feel every movement of the wind and the grass around him. 3 days later, the pet was still fiercely feeding in the sea, and the system reports that evolution points are at 210 and constitution points at 21. He notices that the red-eyed fish are the same as the ones he saw that day and realizes that Tianhua's ship is slowing down, so they must already be close to the spot. He calls Tianhua, saying that the other team has already arrived and asks when they will start. Tianhua says the work is quick, and he will prepare things to begin still that night. The protagonist thinks that after hard work, he gained 15 experience points in control, and with aura enhancement, his strength multiplied. Tianhua calls again, saying he still hasn't seen the other team, and Chen Chu replies that they are already underwater and asks for the location. Tianhua questions if he is serious because that is truly impressive, then gives the coordinates explaining that it is 200 meters to the left and about 700 to 800 meters deep. Connected to the pet, he starts descending but notices that even with his constitution, the water pressure is making everything uncomfortable. Upon reaching the point, he realizes there is nothing there and reports that at 800 meters deep, within a radius of 200 meters, there is nothing. Tianhua asks if he really scanned all of that so fast, thinking it is impossible for someone to sweep 700 to 800 meters deep in just 20 minutes. One of the subordinates comments that after hundreds of years the location has probably changed and asks to try moving about 1 kilometer east. The boss apologizes and asks if the protagonist can check this new direction. He continues scanning with the pet, and after searching for a short while, they finally find what they were looking for. They bring everything to the surface, and when opening it, one of the men tells the boss there is a total of 8 broken pieces and 3 intact ones, valued at around 30 million, and if sold privately, they could get about 20 million more. Tianhua asks the protagonist if he heard, because that is the situation, and Chen Chu states that now the rest is up to Tianhua because he will only come back to collect the money. A few days later, the two meet, and Tianhua says the total exceeded 23 million. Each one receives 11.5 million, and that he can check if he wants. Chen Chu says there is no need because he trusts his work partner. Tianhua laughs, saying the protagonist is quite straightforward and that he will look for him whenever he has new information about sunken ships. Chen Chu looks at the pile of money, thinking that the financial problem is already solved, but his strength is still too weak. He needs to train until he reaches the point where sniper bullets and grenades do not affect him before trying riskier moves. The next day, inside the industry, one of the employees approaches him, saying someone sent a resume the day before claiming they could bring 200 fishing enthusiasts every month for a salary of 50,000. He asks to take a look, and Ning comes over excited that he's back. Upon picking up the resume summary, he reads, "Member of the Fishing Association, knows many insiders in the area." Without a second thought, he crushes the paper and tells the employee to reject that candidate, saying he is nothing but a scammer. Ning, excited, asks why he hasn't been at the office in the last few days, and he replies that he had a big project and ended up earning a few million. She brightens her eyes, saying he is truly amazing, and with a smile on his face, he asks if he hadn't already said he would take everyone to celebrate after that project, and emphasizes that tonight he will take everyone to Yunshang Tianwan. The HR girl thinks that working there is truly wonderful. The job is easy, the salary is excellent, and the boss always treats everyone very well. Ning even jumps with joy, saying how nice he is. The girl keeps thinking that, unlike her friend's company where the manager tried to hit on her, everything there seems perfect. But then she gets a doubt. If the boss himself tried something with her, would she accept it or not? At the restaurant, Ning comments that she didn't know maritime fishing was so profitable. The HR girl asks if just a few days of traveling can really bring millions, and the protagonist says it was just luck because he caught a bluefin tuna, a fish worth hundreds of thousands. Suddenly, a man appears asking if he is Mr. Chen, owner of Tianlan Marine Industries. He introduces himself as Li Tianrui, deputy general manager of the Tianhong Group and a friend of Tianhui, saying that he wants to fish in the sea and asks if Chen Chu is interested in cooperating. The protagonist replies that, as long as it is profitable, he is always interested, and asks the man to go to his company the next day so they can discuss things better. Leng Yue hands over the boss's business card and Li thanks them, saying they will see each other the next day. Xiao Hui observes, saying he didn't expect him to be so young. Ning asks if the Tianhong Group is really big, and Xiao Hui explains that the chairman is worth tens of billions. He is richer than the richest man in the city, and even has the same surname as young Master Li, so maybe they are relatives. Ning is impressed by the idea of tens of billions, and Leng Yue also cannot imagine that she just ran into the son of the richest man during a meal. The protagonist gets excited, thinking that even the heir of the richest man is interested in shipwrecks. Meanwhile, at sea, he thinks it's a coincidence because just when he was telling Xiao Hui about a fish worth more than 10 million, he finds not one but two of them. At night in the warehouse, he looks at the preserved fish, saying that it is worth more than 10 million and its meat isn't even that special. That is not just a fish, it is literally money swimming. And now the next step is to find a buyer and sell it. The next day, while he is still training, the protagonist gets a call saying that young Master Li has been waiting for him in the office for some time. He replies that it's fine and that he is on his way immediately. Shortly after at the industry, the two meet and Tianrui says he has the exact location of a shipwreck. Chen Chu asks why, with all the wealth of the Tianhong Group, young Master Li is still interested in shipwrecks. Tianrui replies that no one thinks they have too much money. The protagonist agrees, saying they will split 50% each after the items arrive, and Tianrui says it's fine by him. Chen Chu keeps staring and thinks that from the young master's look, it's obvious he's not only after the treasure on board, which is interesting. He takes advantage of the meeting and asks Tianrui if he knows anyone who runs high-end seafood restaurants, because he has a 4-meter bluefin tuna. Tianrui says that is very impressive because even a bluefin tuna is within his reach, and adds that he knows someone who owns a seafood restaurant and invites the protagonist to have lunch together so he can introduce them. Sometime later in the warehouse, the protagonist takes manager Lin to see the fish. The manager runs off, and Chen Chu asks him not to run so much because the fish is right there and it won't escape. After examining it, one of the manager's subordinates says the quality of the fish is perfect and all aspects meet A-level standards. Manager Lin says that the fish really is top quality, but since they are all friends, he offers a price of 7 million. The protagonist says it's a good price and accepts the offer. Leng Ye, who is with them, keeps watching her boss, thinking that a single fish was sold for an unbelievable 7 million. Downtown, Chen Chu tells his secretary that they had a great harvest that day, and now it is time to spend a little. She is impressed when she sees that the place is Marriott International, a meeting point for the world's biggest luxury brands. Chen Chu starts buying a lot of things, and Leng Yue is amazed, thinking that this is the peak of luxury and that her boss's money comes way too easily. The saleswoman is impressed, believing a big spender has just arrived. At the dock warehouse, the two are together, and Leng Yue is shocked when she sees that just her boss's watch is already worth 2 million. And he also bought so many luxury items for her, which probably also cost more than 2 million. Chen Chu tells her that he wants to buy a mansion, so she needs to keep an eye out for him. The mansion has to be big and spacious. It can be in a quieter place because he prefers peace and silence, and the price has to be around 30 million. She says she understood all the requirements. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the sea, the protagonist is connected with his pet and sees 2 submarines passing by. He thinks it is truly a shame that he is not strong enough, otherwise he would tear those 2 submarines in half. He keeps swimming and feels something strange. Apparently there is something dangerous down below and he needs to leave immediately because there is no need to take unnecessary risks. But a giant crab appears behind him, trying to attack. He manages to dodge, questioning whether the crab really thinks it would be easy to mess with him, but when trying to strike, he realizes that the crab is much stronger than that mutant ribbonfish. The monster keeps trying to attack, but he dodges every blow, and after gaining some distance, he thinks that the strength shown by that creature exceeds 10 tons, which is interesting. However, he can defeat it easily, but realizes that this big guy cannot be consumed all at once, so he will have to absorb it little by little. Inside his house, he grabs his laptop and checks the reports on unusual marine phenomena in recent years. Giant ribbonfish, giant pigfish, and now a giant spider. He begins to wonder if the world may indeed be changing. He keeps reading the news. SSN 689, a nuclear submarine from Country M, disappeared at 600 meters deep in the Pacific. The latest report states it was attacked by a giant unknown sea creature. Another nuclear submarine in the Arctic collided with a submerged iceberg, killing all 127 crew members. The protagonist says all of this happened within the last 2 years and that apparently, the deeper one goes, the stronger these unknown creatures become. Meanwhile, inside a submerged cave, the pet was feeding on the monster, and the system kept notifying evolution points that wouldn't stop increasing. The protagonist thinks that its body size has now reached 18 meters. On the surface, he continues training, thinking that his physical attributes have increased by more than 100 points. His bone structure, muscle strength, everything has reached a completely new level. Not even punching a metal pole hurts anymore. And now a handgun would at most leave a scratch on his skin. With his natural armor and reaction speed, common bullets won't even leave marks on his body. At MANHWA bookstore, the protagonist is reading a book and thinks that the world is not as simple as he once believed, and that learning and reading are always the right choices. The women in the bookstore start commenting that the guy is very handsome. One of them tells her friend to go ask for his contact, but she gets embarrassed and refuses. After picking up some books, he states that only through continuous learning can a person keep improving. He returns to his training room in the warehouse, saying that bitten and xingyiquan may seem simple, but mastering them is not an easy task. He then gets a call from Tianrui saying that they have already arrived. The protagonist asks for the location because his team will be underwater at noon. Sometime later, the protagonist says they managed to find gold and some porcelain fragments, and Boss Lee asks if he managed to find any special box because, as long as he finds that box, everything else in the wreck will be his. He thinks that just the gold is worth more than 20 million, and that in that special box there is only a bunch of black mud. He has no idea what that guy wants with it. Once everything is recovered, the special box is handed over to Boss Lee, but as soon as he opens it, he almost has a heart attack, saying this cannot have happened to his elixirs. Meanwhile, the deputy chief is investigating another case. His subordinate says that just like the people who died before, all of their blood vanished and their muscles dried up like jerky. However, the time of death is only 10 hours ago. The deputy chief says it is better to wait for the superiors to arrive to investigate. He thinks that all the victims were thugs without family ties, but physically strong, and asks his subordinate Xiao Zhang to write a report later and shut down all entertainment venues in the city. Later that night, another person is attacked. The information reaches the deputy chief, and completely irritated, he asks how this is happening, because everything was shut down. So how did 4 more people just die? While all of this is happening, the protagonist keeps training and after a few days manages to make great progress in both Bajikwan and Xingyiquan. The system appears, notifying that he has understood a new martial arts technique and asks him to give it a name. Chen Chu thinks about it and decides to call it Explosive Fist, because it combines the posture of the 8 extremes of Bajikwan and the half-step Bengquan of Xingyiquan. 1 step, 1 explosion. Punches like cannonballs. In the middle of the sea, a fisherman is excited, saying he finally managed to catch the fish after chasing the shoal for so long. However, he must remain cautious because this time, the investment was huge. Just 1 fishing net costs millions, and he cannot afford any mistakes. Suddenly, the alert inside the cabin goes off. One of the fishermen rushes to the captain, saying there is a hole in the middle of the net and the fish are escaping. The captain tells him to pull the net as fast as possible. Tom Chan-yun says the detector shows nothing. However, the net does not move. Underwater, the protagonist's pet had already reached an enormous size, and he thinks that with a single bite it takes dozens at once, so that free banquet was very satisfying. With its affinity with water, sonar detectors cannot detect it at all, and now it is time to go home because it is already satisfied. When they finally manage to pull the net up, the boat captain starts to panic, questioning why all his fishing nets are torn and why the fish have disappeared. He wonders what kind of monster or divine being could be behind that. Meanwhile, at his dock like a king, the protagonist was relaxing when he received a call from young Master Li, saying he was returning to the city and, to show his gratitude, he would take the protagonist to an amazing place that night. Chen Chu says that if it is an invitation from the young master, then he must check it out. Night arrives and they go to the elegant Mengluo Pavilion. A beautiful girl comes to the door to welcome them. Tianrui arrives all happy, asking if someone reserved the Yungxiao Hall, but the receptionist says that hall is always reserved for him. She takes them to the hall and the protagonist observes the environment, thinking that it is no wonder the king neglects his duties because places like that are perfect for enjoying the atmosphere. After indulging, they go to a forest, but he notices that something is following him because the aura is making him a bit uncomfortable, similar to the night he was chased by that giant lizard. Excited by the situation, he wonders if it could be a monster or even a ghost. However, he is pleased because it has been a while since he has stretched his legs. Suddenly, a guy wanting to show off to his girlfriend calls the protagonist to bet on a race. Chenchu begins to disdain him and accelerates like a madman. The couple is impressed, saying that the turn he just took was completely insane, questioning if he is trying to kill himself and if he is really human. The protagonist thinks that at that speed, not even the fastest car could keep up with him. However, that car is still close, and it seems they are not weak. As soon as he reaches the beach, he gets out of the car and asks the person to get out quickly because he is not a bad guy. A naked woman hiding behind a palm tree says that is a funny way to speak, pointing out that she was bathing at the beach and someone took her clothes, asking if he could give her something to wear. Chenchu starts running toward her, asking if she really wanted clothes, because if that is the case, then he can get some for her. As he approaches, he throws a punch toward her, causing a huge impact, but is surprised as a mist covers the place. As that mist begins to dissipate, the girl transforms into a monster, saying that the protagonist's vital energy is truly impressive, strong, and rich, and now she really wants to eat him. Startled, he retreats quickly, dodging her attack, and asks who she is. She says she is also human, but a more perfect version, and her name is Ying Xiao, the Orochimaru of the black market. She keeps attacking while shouting that eating the protagonist is like eating hundreds of healthy and energetic people, enough to help her complete the first stage of evolution. Chenchu keeps dodging all attacks, but with astonishing speed he appears behind her, asking if she really wants to eat him, because first they must see if she has what it takes. She is shocked by his speed and his completely terrifying strength. He throws just one strike, causing a massive explosion. Ying Xiao, already defeated, asks how this is possible because the protagonist clearly does not have the aura of an awakened one. She tries to escape, hiding behind the palm trees. However, the protagonist is like a predator, attacking her at all costs and destroying everything in front of him. He realizes that this being can merge with trunks and stones, but every time he attacks the attached object, her aura weakens. After destroying everything around them, Ying Xiao has nowhere left to run, and the protagonist stares at her on the ground, saying that merging with trunks and trees really is a good survival ability. However, it is a pity that she met him. He emphasizes that if she answers a few questions, she will receive a quick and painless death. Ying Xiao asks if she looks like someone who fears death and begins to laugh, saying that this place is very beautiful, but it is a pity she will not see it again. Still, it is fine because she has already taken her revenge. She says that if she had just one more month, she could have completed her shadow transformation, and by then not even a god of war would be able to scare her. But instead, she met a true monster in an ordinary city. Her body begins to dissolve until it completely disappears. The system notifies that he managed to eliminate a corruptor and gained 10 attribute points. He becomes a bit confused and asks what a corruptor is and what those attribute points are. The system explains that they can enhance abilities, strengthen weapons, and improve the body itself in addition to unlocking special abilities such as lightning, ice, fire, and others. He looks at the system, thinking that he already has extraordinary powers and that soon the giant lizard will have them too. He starts smiling, imagining that with those powers he could create a real-life Godzilla. He goes to the warehouse and begins searching about corruptors and awakeners, but his search on the internet finds no relevant information, and he concludes that apparently the authorities have blocked those details. Still, he thinks it is fine because he is still too weak, and when he becomes stronger, he will explore this world again, maybe after his physique surpasses 10,000 points. Suddenly, the system appears asking him to choose an element to enhance: wind, fire, water, earth, lightning, light, or darkness. His current physique is insufficient, allowing him to strengthen only one basic element, so he quickly chooses lightning. The system notifies that attribute points were used to enhance his extraordinary abilities, granting lightning mastery and +1 to his mental attribute. He begins to control lightning with his fingers and asks if that is just a cheap version of lightning powers, but accepts it because even lightning mastery has experience points and seems it can be improved with training, which is not bad at all. Currently, his status is Level 1, Physique 465, Mental 57, Mental Control External QI Techniques, Beginner Experience 571 thousandths, QI Sense Beginner Experience 481 thousandths. Abilities: Collapsing Punch, Beginner experience 26 500ths. Sky Step intermediate experience 517 1000ths. Spring Kick intermediate experience 412 1000ths. Powers. Lightning Mastery. Beginner experience 10 10,000ths. Attribute points 0. Clone. Spiked Scaled Lizard evolved twice. Already a mature beast. Goal to become a Beast Lord. Evolution value 3,195 thousandths. Clone abilities. Observation Hockey. Armament Hockey. Talents. Affinity with water and lightning mastery. At the bottom of the sea, the lizard was already using its lightning power to eliminate its prey. The protagonist thinks it is another mutant sea beast as terrifying as the giant spider from last time. With that prey, the lizard gains 980 evolution points, and the protagonist concludes that so far, the giant lizard has lightning mastery and is already stronger than him. Meanwhile, at the city airport, the deputy chief was waiting for someone. He approaches and asks if those two are agents from the Department of Special Affairs. He introduces himself as Guan and says he was assigned to receive them. The man shakes his hand and introduces himself as Huang Junfeng, thanking in advance for their cooperation. The man in white says his name is Nangong Jian, chief investigator of case 907, and asks to see the body. They proceed to the morgue where Guan presents the corpse, explaining that this person died the night before and was the only body found, and that in the past 4 days, 4 people mysteriously died each night. Junfeng begins using his powers to analyze and senses Yin Xiao's aura. However, Jian notices that the aura is fading, which means she is dead. His partner gets confused, asking how the person who did that also died. Meanwhile, in the warehouse, the protagonist kept training, thinking that his power had grown too fast and he was not managing to control it, so he does not dare visit Ning's house because he fears breaking her couch just by sitting. He remembers giving her a ride when she invited him for tea, but he said he couldn't because he had other plans for that afternoon. Furthermore, he thinks he cannot get too close to her since he might accidentally crush her bones. The next day, a seller was showing house number 88. He says the main building has 560 square meters, with a front garden of 70 square meters, plus a backyard of 200 square meters and a billiard room of 80 square meters. He emphasizes that the last buyer, the current owner, paid in full including furniture worth over 1 million, and that the total price is 34 million. Chen Chu says that for 25 million he will buy it now. However, he suddenly receives a call for help on the phone, saying there is a monster. Somewhere else on top of a building, Junfeng and Jian were observing. Junfeng comments that no unusual activity has occurred since last night, and that it shows the corruptor is really dead, but he finds everything very strange, because that being was in a semi-ethereal state, and a being like that is not something normal people can handle. He asks the captain if they should stay and investigate since they could take the opportunity to get to know a bit of the city's commotion. Jian tells him to use his free time to train, otherwise when the apocalypse comes, he will just become cannon fodder. Junfeng doesn't believe the apocalypse is close. The captain says the professor predicts the next spatial fluctuation will be 10 times stronger than 20 years ago, and that the most urgent matter is to increase their capabilities in every aspect in anticipation of that day, because only then will they be able to repay the country for having raised them. Over time, at the bottom of the sea, the lizard was searching again. The protagonist sees more gold and stops, realizing he finally found something valuable, but moving too much sand ended up breaking a lot of porcelain, and that is his fault. He starts checking the value and realizes he struck gold, because a single piece from that dynasty is worth at least a few million, maybe tens of millions. He takes a deep breath, saying it's a shame that his careless agitation destroyed so many things, since it could have been worth more than 100 million. Suddenly, he hears shouting. The waitress was asking what that guy tried to take, but the man yells back asking what she's talking about, questioning what she thinks she saw and saying she can't accuse him like that. He declares that since he's being accused of taking something, then he might as well actually take something. Another customer at the table asks how he can be so shameless since he clearly saw everything. The waitress begins to back away, afraid of the situation. The man shouts back at the customer, saying it doesn't matter whether he saw anything or not because if he doesn't like it, he should try to do something about it. The protagonist stands up, saying this is interesting because he has never met someone as arrogant as that guy. The man keeps acting arrogantly, saying he has just met him, and if he isn't happy with the outcome, then he should try to hit him. Chen Chu starts walking toward him, and the man keeps acting arrogant, asking if he's really going to try something, since he is just another bloodthirsty youngster who only knows how to talk. The protagonist asks the shopkeeper if there are surveillance cameras there. She understands exactly what he meant and goes to the outlet pulling the plug and saying that, unfortunately, the cameras are broken. The protagonist smiles and, with a single slap, knocks the man out, commenting that nowadays someone actually enjoying getting beaten is ridiculous. Back at his warehouse, the system reports that his thunder control experience increased by another 10 points, and his mental strength rose by 1 point. Lying on the sofa playing with electricity, he thinks that human life barely reaches a century and is just the blink of an eye in a star's life, and that one day he will break the boundary between life and death. The next day, Chen-Chu meets Leng Yue and asks her to find some time to study accounting books because she will take care of the company's finances when the time comes, and for that she will receive double. She is surprised but happy at the same time and agrees. He turns to get into the car and she asks where he is going. He smiles, saying he needs to sell some things. Shortly after they arrive at a shop and a man introduces himself saying his surname is Gao, and he is the owner of that antique shop. Chen-Chu asks if he can help estimate the value of that plate. The shop owner invites them to discuss it in a more private place. As soon as they go upstairs, the protagonist shows the plate inside the briefcase. The shopkeeper analyzes the item coldly, saying it has a salty sea smell and was apparently recovered from the ocean floor. After examining it, he confirms it is truly genuine. But it is part of a set, and apparently Chen-Chu only has one piece, which significantly reduces its value. The protagonist is a bit upset, saying that it really looked like a set because when he found the piece there were many others around, but unfortunately that was the only intact one. Gao comments that this is indeed a pity, and if it's only that piece, he can offer 4.5 million. Chen-Chu says it's a good price, but he'll think about it. Sometime later, in the middle of the street, Leng Yue tells the boss that after visiting so many shops, Gao does seem to be the most genuine. The protagonist asks what she meant by genuine since he did offer the highest price, and maybe they should sell to him. However, he still has doubts because he felt something strange in that man's eyes, and he is definitely hiding something. In the luxurious villa's living room, a man was asking Gao if he was really saying that he had managed to find a clue about that sunken ship. Gao shows the plate he bought from the protagonist, saying that this porcelain has the official seal they had been looking for, and emphasizes that it was sold to him by a young man, clearly someone who must know something more. His boss tells Gao to send all the information to Fox because within half an hour at most he wants to know everything about that person. A few minutes later, they receive the information, and Gao says that the protagonist is just an ordinary college student who suddenly spent almost 3 million to buy a luxury car and even traveled abroad together with Li Tianrui. He asks his boss if they should keep doing business with those people who are supporting this kid, and Du Hong starts smiling, wondering what Gao is even talking about. Lying in his bed, Chen-Chu remembers that Gao had asked him to fill out that form because they needed his information for future transfers or auctions. He thinks that the negotiation that day went really well. However, he still can't shake the feeling that Boss Gao is hiding something, but he hopes nothing strange happens. The next day, inside the elevator, the protagonist keeps feeling weird. He thinks last night was actually peaceful, and maybe he's just overthinking it, so it's probably better to forget about it and head straight to school to check things out. After absorbing that sea python, his strength, muscle density, and everything else had reached 50 to 60 times that of a normal person, and maybe now he could even withstand bullets. As soon as the elevator arrives on the floor, a man was outside. Chen-Chu steps out of the elevator and is immediately intercepted. The man places a gun against his back, telling him not to move or make a sound. He must just follow along. The protagonist simply obeys, and inside a van he pretends to be completely terrified, asking where those thugs are taking him since he doesn't remember having done anything to offend them. The driver says they're taking him to meet someone, so he shouldn't try anything. Shortly after, they arrive at a hideout. One of the lackeys tells his boss they managed to bring the boy. The boss, with a scratch on his face and irritated, says he'd like to see what kind of person made him wait all night. The protagonist smiles and asks if it's just them. The people who had kidnapped him start to get scared because that kid was completely terrified before and suddenly became calm. And what was even stranger was that his calmness was unsettling. The boss realizes something is wrong and shouts for everyone to grab their guns immediately. Chen-Chu uses his speed and with one strike knocks out the thug who was armed beside him. He grabs the gun in his hand and their boss tells the protagonist to lower the gun. One of the ones pointing a gun asks if he's not listening since he was already told to lower it. The boss starts to smile, even though a bit nervous, and tells Chen-Chu that he only has one gun while he has two. And besides, the gun the protagonist is holding only has one bullet, so he has no choice because he's surrounded. Chen-Chu looks at them and questions if they still haven't understood, saying that he's not the one trapped with them. They're the ones trapped with him. He tells the boss to say who's behind all this, because if they're honest, he'll end this quickly. The thugs still think it's just a bluff, but the protagonist, without hesitation, shoots the boss right in the middle of the forehead. The thugs scream, saying that now he's out of bullets and they need to catch him. They start shooting. Chen-Chu throws the gun away and starts releasing his aura, catching the bullet with his hand. The thugs begin to tremble in fear, asking what that thing is, because that guy was truly a monster. and the protagonist keeps laughing and asking if now they think he's strong, because not long ago things were quite different. The sound of the punches echoed throughout the hideout. After wiping out almost all of them and leaving only one of the thugs, the protagonist approaches and tells him to say at once who sent them there. Trembling with fear, the man says it was the director of the Longhua Group, named Du Hong. He is also the owner of that store on Guan Street and lives at Guanshan Villa number 3. The protagonist takes the boss's phone and calls Hong, saying his name is Chen Chu and that they will see each other tonight. He hangs up the phone. Gao gets irritated, asking if the protagonist really asked for 20 million, because that's too greedy. The boss tells him to get ready because that amount is worth dozens of lives, and he would like to see if the protagonist can really take it for himself. At night, a car was driving down the road while right beside it the protagonist was running like a lightning bolt. He thinks his speed has reached 120 meters per second, which totals 432 kilometers per hour. Meanwhile, inside Du Hong's mansion, armed guards were scattered everywhere and the entire house was lit up. Inside the office, along with a bunch of other guards, were Hong and Gao. Gao asks his boss if he thinks that kid got scared because he single-handedly defeated 7 armed men and clearly has something more than what he appears to. Hong keeps acting superior and says that he has about a dozen gunmen and several dozen loyal subordinates, and that this is the time to put them to work. Suddenly, all the lights in the house go out, leaving the gunmen alarmed. The guards say they activated the backup power, however the security camera at the front gate is broken, and the front door was also forced open. This only proves how fast the intruder is. Hong starts getting scared and punches the table, saying they need to shoot at anyone who steps in there, no matter who it is. Meanwhile, outside the door, the protagonist had already taken down countless gunmen. He knocks on the door and everyone keeps aiming. The moment he opens it, the boss shouts for them to shoot. But before they could even pull the trigger, the protagonist had already taken down the 2 closest ones and stops right in front of the boss. Hong realizes this is not normal, and it seems the protagonist has awakened. He stands up in total panic, saying he would give 500 million if he lets the 2 of them leave alive. Still irritated by the situation, Chen Chu says that it really is tempting, but he can't let them live after dealing with everyone else in there. Though he would like to talk a bit about those who have awakened, because he'll make sure the 2 of them at least have some fun. Hong starts to panic but sees no other choice. So he begins telling a story saying that back in '99 they were fighting over territory with about a dozen other brothers. In Tiger Mountain City, a person covered in flames descended from the sky and the whole city turned into a sea of fire in the blink of an eye. The next day, that place was nothing but a huge lake, and the authorities called it the Sunken Lake. The protagonist is surprised to realize how powerful awakened people are, and he feels relieved that he wasn't causing trouble at that time. Hong takes advantage of him lowering his guard and shoots, screaming for him to die. However, as expected, the protagonist easily dodges the bullet and in mere milliseconds takes down both of them, thinking that it doesn't matter who it is. If they're within his reach, then they're already dead, and that guy is so rich that to him he's nothing but a simple insect. Sometime later in the mansion that had been reduced to rubble, Guan and Guan Qing start analyzing the situation. She says that 31 bodies were found in total, one of them being the director of the Longhua Group. The deputy chief says his guess is that this was caused by Chen Chu and that he is probably responsible for the deaths in the Red Forest as well. He starts to think that there are unusual movements in the land there and that the next attack is imminent. Even though he had been planning to give the protagonist a chance, he is being too cruel in abandoning the straight and narrow path. Back in the warehouse at the port, the protagonist looks at the tray on the table, saying that the chicken he stored rose up and there are oil marks everywhere, and apparently whatever came there last night is extraordinary. Meanwhile, at the bottom of the sea, his pet kept eating nonstop. The system notifies that it obtained 67 evolution points and physical attributes increased by 6.7. He thinks there's more further down, so he decides to take a look. 1,200 meters below the surface, he finds an active volcano, but realizes that the pressure is becoming a bit hard to withstand. Still in the warehouse, Chen Chu notices someone walking around carrying a bag of chicken. He thinks that person can't run, so he decides to attack, causing a huge explosion. But as the dust begins to settle, he realizes there's nothing there, and that the person simply vanished. He starts wondering what kind of power that is. Could it be a dimensional rift, a pathway to another world, or something of that sort? Suddenly, something strange starts happening, and the system warns him that his body is being corrupted by polluted energy. A few seconds later, another warning appears saying that his body is strong enough to be immune, but that this resistance will be surpassed after 5 hours. That strange energy begins to spread through the place, and the protagonist asks if that is another world. Suddenly, at the door, a strange being appears, and as it starts to approach, the protagonist realizes it is a monster. Even without knowing exactly what it was, he didn't hesitate to attack, and with a single punch, blew the monster's head apart. The system notified that he had eliminated a defective demonic corpse and earned attribute points. The door through which that monster came was still glowing with the name, Tiger Mountain City welcomes you. Chenchu walks through the door and appears somewhere else, saying that Tiger Mountain City is the same city Hong mentioned, the one that was turned into a lake overnight. He takes a quick look around and understands that the city wasn't destroyed, but rather pulled into another world, though he thinks it's better to go back because it's dangerous there. While he was returning, a girl up in a tree holding what looked like a human organ keeps staring and then starts eating it. He tells the system that he wants to use those points to quickly strengthen his electric powers. The system notifies that the attribute points were used to enhance his electrical control abilities, experience +20, spirit +2. He starts researching this incident, discovering that Tiger Mountain City sank, 600 people are missing, and 30,000 were displaced. Chenchu is shocked to see that more than 30,000 people disappeared along with the city, and if all of them turned into monsters, then there's an absurd amount of status points in that place. He calls Tianrui asking if he could help verify where the displaced people from Tiger Mountain City are. Tianrui says he'll look into it tomorrow. The next day, the protagonist goes to the iron shop to talk to the owner. He says he wants him to make a small steel house and a big knife as decoration. The knife must be 2 meters long and thick, durable and sharp. The shop owner becomes a bit concerned and tells the protagonist that this might be difficult to make because there are regulations regarding the production of knives. Chenchu asks if he really thinks someone would carry a 60-kilo knife around the city causing chaos. With nothing else to say, the owner just starts laughing. Chenchu begins to think that demonic corpses are strange beings, and he might end up infected by them. Besides a knife and a metal house, he could also use some armor. At the Hyacian Hotel, the information received says that there are many conflicting reports about the survivors of Tiger Mountain City. The authorities claim the matter is resolved, and even after investigating, they couldn't find anything. Inside his car, the protagonist says this was already expected. More than 30,000 people were also buried at the bottom of the sea. He sees that it wasn't a bad day of work, since he managed to collect more than 40 of them that day, and he only needs 300 more evolution points to evolve for the third time. Later that day, in another house, the agent introduces a woman saying that she is the owner of the house, Miss Lin Chinj. She says that apparently Chenchu has a great eye. The protagonist says that all the money is right there, and they can start after she checks if everything is in order. Chinj is impressed when she sees that he brought 20 million in cash. Deep under the sea, the pet kept eating nonstop. The system notifies that it gained 29 evolution points and reached the maximum score possible for this phase, asking if it wants to evolve. The lizard was 1,400 meters below the surface, and he says yes. Both begin evolving at the same time, and he thinks he can hear ants moving food 100 meters away. 300 meters away, a security guard on patrol complaining about life. His strength and speed doubled, and he remains just as agile as ever. Now he has reached Earth level, his constitution has hit 1,000, and his spirit 200. The system notifies that he has gained water affinity talent and electric fire spit, along with electrical control. He thinks he gained the electric fire spit ability because he ate all those mutant tiger-headed fish. He thinks that now his pet is a total of 40 meters long, and at this point, it's not just a giant lizard, but Godzilla itself. It fires its electric fire, and he thinks that even though it's reasonably strong, it is still weak internally, and its electric fire has only average power. For now, nothing changes, until he notices another huge monster a bit deeper. The monster tries to attack, but he manages to defend himself, thinking it's quite strong and that when he eats that monster, he'll probably be able to bite a warship in half. Using only the strength of his limbs, he rips open the opponent's mouth, thinking it's just too strong. After eating the entire monster, he thinks that tiger-headed fish gave him over 2,000 evolution points and a lot of burning energy. He keeps swimming around the place because that cave must have been the territory of that enormous tiger-headed fish. While looking around the place, he sees something terrifying. An iron bar was lodged into a monster's skull, and he thinks it's horrifying, giving off a feeling of fear he can't even describe. And it also seems like there's something inside the head because the energy in his body is boiling. The system warns that he has discovered an ancestral factor and asks if he wants to absorb it immediately. The protagonist says yes, and the pet's body becomes surrounded by dense energy. The system says he has absorbed an ancestral factor and is now undergoing an extraordinary evolution, having obtained the power of an ancestral beast, Kiksh's Crimson Flame, currently absorbing Crimson Flame energy. Crimson Flame plus 10 points. He decides to test his new ability, and upon using it causes a massive explosion meters away. He becomes impressed with his own power because that demonstration of strength was terrifying, a simple burst of energy, and that island vanished completely. A little later in the warehouse, the protagonist is fully equipped. The sword he is holding weighs a total of 120 kilos, and it's the perfect weight for him, so he names it the Celestial Sword. The armor he is wearing is made of titanium alloy, and it's not bad either since it's quite useful, and once he evolves further, he will be able to detect other beings. When he opens the door, he is surprised because he didn't expect his first opponent to be just a little girl. He starts questioning if she is one of the Tiger Mountain City survivors with special powers, because if so, she is also a monster. He goes in and notices there are many other monsters, and apparently the city gets livelier at night. Without hesitation, he begins his attacks. The system says he eliminated a demon corpse and gained 5 attribute points, and he asked to strengthen his weapon, the Celestial Sword. The system asks which aspect he would like to enhance: durability, sharpness, armor-piercing capability, damage against monsters, elemental enhancement wind, fire, lightning, electricity, or light. And Chenchu asked to put 3 points into durability and 2 into sharpness. He keeps attacking the monsters, destroying all those coming his way, and begins releasing energy saying that they're fast but not fast enough. The system notifies again saying that he defeated a second-level demon and earned 10 attribute points. His armor was enhanced by 15 points, and he acquired a first-level shock deflection ability. He tells it to put 5 points to increase the armor's resistance and 5 points to improve the sword's cutting power. He notices something moving near him, and when he looks to the side, he sees a strange slime moving quickly. He attacks and destroys everything with ease. The system keeps notifying him that he killed a violent second-level demon and gained 12 attribute points, eliminated a 4-armed second-level demon and gained 10 attribute points, and killed a snake-like second-level demon and gained 10 attribute points. Suddenly, an even bigger and stronger monster appears beside him preparing an attack. He thinks this is important. There's no way he earned all those points for nothing. The monster attacks, causing a huge impact in the area, and the protagonist dodges at the very last second. He thinks that monster is basically as strong as he is, but it's far too slow and that fight won't even be fun. He begins attacking and with just a few blows manages to eliminate the monster. The system says he killed a 5th-level armored demon and gained 100 attribute points and also discovered the demonic armor element. Now he can use 10 attribute points to absorb it. Chenchu thinks it makes sense that the monster was truly strong since it was 5th level, and now he understands why he needed to hit it more than 10 times to take it down. But this also shows he still lacks a fatal strike strong enough to eliminate monsters with a single move. Suddenly, he hears a voice telling him to run, and as he approaches, he realizes it's the girl who stole his chicken, the same girl who told him to run before, and she doesn't seem to intend to attack him. He gets closer and gently touches her head, asking if she is Shixi, and introduces himself saying his name is Chenchu, and emphasizes that from now on she'll be his little sister and he'll take care of her. The protagonist calls her over saying he'll take her back to the city and buy her new, beautiful clothes. Sometime later in the city, the two are inside the car and Chenchu asks if she knows what that dark lake is in the flooded area. She says it's the black tide, but she doesn't know what's in there, only that it's dangerous. He buys a pretty dress for her, and after taking a bath and putting it on, he gives her food. Shixi begins running around the house completely happy, as if she were a child again. He looks at his status panel, now level 1, with physical strength above 1,000, mental strength above 200, mental control and external chi techniques at beginner level with 780 out of 1,000 experience, chi sense at beginner level with 640 out of 1,000 experience, skills collapsing punch, beginner with 105 out of 500 experience, celestial steps intermediate with 580 out of 1,000 experience, spring kick, intermediate with 460 out of 1,000 experience. Proficiencies lightning mastery beginner with 400 out of 10,000 experience. Crimson flame with 930 out of 1,000 experience, attribute points 80. Inventory demonic armor element 1 unit. Weapons celestial sword resilience plus 13. Cutting power plus 7. Armor break, no data. Armor demon emperor armor resilience plus 35. Shock deflection specialty at first level. Lizard clone with scaled spines evolved 3 times. A beastly home with ancient origins, evolution value, 2,420 out of 10,000. Chenchu thinks that when he was fighting, he was fully covered, which suppressed his crimson flame and allowed him to unleash an explosive force capable of guaranteeing certain death. And since he still has 80 attribute points, it might be better to use them to strengthen his armor. He believes he has just surpassed the intermediate level and is at least 3 times stronger now, and Shixi watches impressed by the protagonist's aura. Meanwhile, at the university, a group of people were sitting, and one of the students says the place they are training in seems to be at least lieutenant level. The blonde asks if he's referring to a second lieutenant, and the girl questions if he means they ended up attracting the attention of some secret department. Suddenly, someone else walks into the room saying, "That's exactly it. A special department has been created in the city, and as soon as training ends, the successful participants will become lieutenants. However, there will be many dangers." He asks whether the group wants to quit or join, and everyone chooses to join. Back at the warehouse, the protagonist was still training. He says that his external covering makes the power of the crimson flame concentrate inside him and then explode outward with everything. That will be his strongest attack, capable of eliminating anything in a single move, since his punch has at least 150 tons of force. So he will call this technique Exterminating Flame. After training, he sits on the floor exhausted, thinking that 100 punches should be enough, and that now, if he finds that demonic corpse again, 3 punches should solve the problem. On the university campus, the protagonist walks past the students, and one of the girls says that he truly is very handsome. The blonde guy beside her says that car is very expensive, and that guy must have been born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Another girl scolds him, telling him to be nicer. The guy with glasses asks why she cares so much about that guy. The driver says it's because he saved Lin Rongya from 4 kidnappers a month ago. The blonde keeps acting superior, asking if that kid really saved someone from 4 kidnappers. But the guy with glasses tries to downplay it, saying they weren't kidnappers, just some desperate men. The girl in the orange overalls asks if the protagonist is really that strong. Meanwhile, sitting in a plaza, he remains still while the pet does the work. He spots a submarine, thinking it must be a vessel full of thugs from the land of the kangaroos, and that's why it's so small, and apparently it's a good place for him to test his new strength. Inside the submarine, the alarms begin to blare. The crew screams that sonar detected a large life form 100 meters below, approaching fast. Another says it's indeed heading straight toward them at an impressive speed. Just brushing its claws along the side of the submarine was enough to tear a huge gash. The crew screams that the 2 rear cabins have been damaged and are leaking, and the sonar has also been damaged. The captain shouts to close the valves immediately to stop water from entering, and they need to activate multi-beam bathymetry, define a destination, and get an image of the surroundings. One of the crew members manages to get the image and tells the captain it's a massive creature about 40 meters long, even larger than a blue whale. The captain cannot believe it, asking how something can be that big when blue whales normally reach only 30 meters, and he orders the rear hatches closed and to return to the surface immediately, but the crewman says the water intake is severe and still causing damage. With no other options, the captain orders them to fire the torpedoes, push the turbines to maximum power, and head to the surface as fast as possible. The pet looks at the torpedoes coming toward him and starts smiling, because now he has reached a speed of 200 kilometers per hour and those torpedoes will never catch him. The show has only just begun. The submarine tries to escape, but the pet quickly catches up. The torpedoes that were following him head straight for the vessel and cause a massive explosion. The protagonist analyzes the situation, thinking that even so, the submarine's explosions are not very strong, and if he's hit directly, he would definitely get hurt, which means he needs to get even stronger. During the night, Chenchu and Shixi were watching a performance, and a man beside him says that the new girl is one of the 4 most beautiful of all the new students, because she dances with the agility of a bird. The protagonist becomes a bit surprised, asking if she is that girl, while his new little sister is stunned by her beauty. That woman performing is the same one who had been altered and leaning against a pole earlier, and as soon as she finishes performing, another person arrives, a man holding a bouquet of roses, and confesses that he fell in love with her at first sight, asking Chinkin to be his girlfriend. The crowd watching the show starts shouting, asking what that guy is talking about, saying that the woman is free and needs to leave the stage, that doing that is outdated and he should stop embarrassing himself. Chin Chin apologizes to the president, but says that the audience will not allow her to say yes, and besides, she doesn't like him anyway. After the event, she goes to the protagonist and asks if he still remembers her. People start looking around, wondering why the school beauty is waiting for that guy. The protagonist is a bit confused, and she says that about a month ago, he had called the police and saved a girl who had been drugged. Chenchu says he remembers that and asks if there is any problem. Embarrassed, she keeps staring at him, trying to speak, but her shyness won't let her. The protagonist turns away and says that if there's nothing to be said, then he will leave. Shixi looks at that woman and doesn't like her very much. She looks at the protagonist's car and says that it costs at least $2 million, and on top of that, he's wearing Gucci shoes worth at least $30,000, which only shows he looks like someone born into wealth, unlike that guy Wei Xian. Sometime later, back in Tiger Mountain City, Chenchu says that according to what his little sister said, the dark tide is coming, and he needs to find a cave, because everything in that land will vanish, and that cave has 30 meters of depth and 4 or 5 meters in height, so it will serve. He defeats 2 more opponents, and the system says he eliminated a second-level mutant Bone Lance demon corpse and gained 20 attribute points, and also eliminated a third-level mutant Flaming demon corpse and gained 20 attribute points. He is surprised to see that a demon corpse managed to evolve fire control power and even got a little hot. He asks the system if he can increase the resistance of his clothes against demonic attacks. The system notifies that he used 10 attribute points, and his armor merged with demonic materials and ignited, becoming extraordinary. Chenchu says that with extraordinary demon armor, he has basically become immune to normal flames. Meanwhile, his pet was searching for food. The protagonist thinks the Pacific doesn't have many deep-sea fish, and mutant fish are hard to find. And if that's the case, maybe he could hunt them at a fish farm. Somewhere underwater, he finds a school of fish and thinks that more than 20 of them should be enough for a good day of food. Still in that strange space, the protagonist encounters a slightly different opponent. He manages to defend himself but is impressed by the speed of the monster, because it broke the sound barrier. The monster looks at him saying it has found fresh meat. The protagonist studies his opponent's movements, thinking that the sword technique of that demon corpse is surprisingly agile, and when it grips a blade, its arm trembles twice, and the sword's trajectory changes. Now that he understands it, it's time to end this. So he charges forward with everything he has. But suddenly, a face appears on the demon's chest, spitting an impressive amount of fire. The protagonist defends and uses his exterminating flame ability. The demon's face is shocked and is finished off with a single strike. The system notifies that he eliminated a 5th-level blazing demon corpse and earned 100 attribute points, fusion core element discovered, and now he can spend 10 attribute points to extract it. Even without knowing exactly what the fusion core element is, he decides to extract it anyway. Suddenly, a heart appears on his sword, and the system says that his weapon, the celestial sword, has been fused with demonic materials and ignited, becoming extraordinary. He tests the weapon and is surprised to see that now it can launch attacks, as he can combine the power of flames and lightning to create an energy explosion with the sword. On the other side of the city, Chenchu finds a completely different demon corpse and is shocked to see that it underwent so many mutations that it turned into something similar to a spider. He looks around and realizes the forest is so quiet it's getting eerie, so he will head back. Back at the warehouse, Shixi runs to the door after the protagonist leaves, saying she will close it for him. Chenchu is surprised and wonders if she can really close a shapeless door, which means she has spatial power and is more mysterious than he thought. But closing the door works very well anyway. At least this way, the remaining demons won't leave while he's not there. The system says it has detected that the protagonist can increase his storage space and that with 10 attribute points, he gains 1 square meter. The system asks if he wants to do it, and he says yes. He says that's exactly what he needed, because he was about to start complaining that carrying that sword was getting inconvenient, and having a storage space is everything he wanted. In the deep sea, the pet had already appeared about 5 to 6 meters in just 3 hours and gained 500 evolution points, and farm-raised fish taste very good as expected. On the surface, aboard a boat, a man calls his companion Shan Tianjun and uses a torch to shine a light on the water, asking what happened to that tuna. Tianjun says it's very strange because there is enough oxygen in the water. Suddenly, they notice a bit of blood in the water and start shouting that something is happening to the tuna. But a second later, the boat is completely destroyed with just 1 strike from the pet, throwing both men far away. Inside his house, Chenchu says he still has more than 100 attribute points left, so he should level everything up. The system says it used 40 attribute points and strengthened his chi sense, experience plus 400, reaching intermediate level, and then used 60 attribute points and strengthened the spring kick, experience plus 600, reaching moonstep. He jumps, testing his 2 abilities, and realizes his chi perception increased from 100 meters to 500 meters, and that moonstep allows him to stay in the air for a moment. Sometime later, while brushing his sister's hair, he is watching the news. The reporter says that a surprising black mist appeared in the city, covering 100 kilometers of area and causing more than 500 people to disappear. Chenchu is surprised because it seems similar to the black tide and only proves that world peace won't last long. In the deep sea off Aoding Island, a submarine was navigating the area, and a beast man approaches researcher Shan Benjun asking how Professor Kant's research is going. Benjun says he recovered a special substance from the body of the giant beast and even discovered the method by which the beast heals. The beast man asks if it is an extraordinary substance because, if that is true, then they can now create extraordinary humans. The researcher says that besides that, they will also be able to control even the greatest beasts. The submarine finally reaches its destination, They disembark, and two people carry a box saying they have brought the mini nuclear power plant to that place. He says that is very good because it is almost reaching its target. In the middle of the ice, a gigantic dragon with a blade stuck in its chest was trapped. A man says the facility is complete and the nuclear power source has been connected. An old man says that the nuclear energy managed to enter the beast's body and it recovered. And also, it is intelligent enough to know that the metal collar will kill it, and now it must follow instructions. Benjamin tells Professor Kant that he is even smarter than Einstein. The beast begins to move and the professor shouts that it finally worked and that the monster will awaken soon. The protagonist's pet was watching all of this and thinks those people are trying to resurrect a giant beast and therefore must die, so he stomps the ground hard, causing a collapse. Everyone panics, saying another giant monster is there and they must block it immediately or they will all die. The professor gives the order to fire and calls Benjamin to run to the submarine. The guards start using everything they have, shooting and even throwing grenades. While the professor ran as fast as he could, none of it had any effect. The monster kept moving to attack them. The guards say it can't be real because even armor-piercing 24mm rounds and an explosive bullet didn't work. Another guard says those weapons are used in civil wars. The pet wonders if this is really all humans are capable of, then uses its ultrasonic roar ability, unleashing its crimson flame and wiping out all the soldiers around. The professor and Benjamin try to escape in the submarine, but the pet spots them and launches another attack, destroying the submarine. Suddenly, the giant beast that was imprisoned awakens. The pet observes this and thinks that they really did manage to resurrect that creature, and its aura is terrifying. The protagonist thinks his pet only needs to keep its distance and kill it using electrical attacks. He strikes the giant beast, which begins screaming that it has just woken up and isn't strong enough yet, begging him to stop. As soon as he finishes eliminating that giant beast, the system notifies that he just discovered a damaged ancient reason and asks if he wants to absorb it. He says yes. The system continues notifying, telling the protagonist that his clone rested and gained evolution points +5 and physical strength +0.5. He is surprised to see that he can get stronger just by resting. After absorbing the damaged reason, Shixi is eating cake eagerly, saying it's delicious. His phone rings and shows a message. Situ Chanqian asks if he's free tomorrow because she would like to have lunch together. He says yes and tells her he'll pick her up at 11. Inside the teleportation gate, the protagonist is fighting another monster, and while dodging its attacks, he thinks it's incredible. Those blows could probably destroy a tank. Yet again, he wins with just one strike. The system says he eliminated a 4th-level demonic creature and gained 50 attribute points. He's a bit disappointed because he thought it would at least be a 5th-level one. He continues advancing quickly through the area using his probe, finds another nearby monster, and goes straight to attack. When the battle starts, the monster identifies his extraordinary level armor, and he immediately spends the 50 attribute points to strengthen himself. He launches forward and leaps, breaking the ground on his way to the opponent, but when he tries to strike, he cannot reach it, because a protective barrier rises between them. He realizes that energy wall is protecting the enemy, and that he needs a bit more force to break it. Using his exterminating flames ability, he manages to pierce the barrier and eliminate the monster. The system says he eliminated a 6th-level demonic creature and earned 200 attribute points. He allocates 100 points to strengthen his external chi and 100 points to enhance Crimson Flame. As he does so, the flames imbued in his sword become even stronger. He says the temperature of his flames rose from 3,000 to 10,000 degrees, and the range of his attacks increased to 30 meters. He strikes a monster that was flying and notices he managed to bring down a dragonfly with a single blow. Now his status has reached Earth level, and his power has surpassed that of extremely strong individuals. Physical above 1,652, mental above 254, external chi techniques intermediate with 6,200 out of 10,000 experience. Chi sense intermediate with 50 out of 10,000 experience. Spring kick advanced with 60 out of 10,000 experience. Proficiencies and powers lightning mastery, 400 out of 10,000. Crimson flame 1,930 out of 10,000. Attribute points 280. Inventory 2 cubic meters. Weapons. Celestial Sword Resilience 13. Cutting 7. Armor Break 10. Special Ability Core Conversion. Armor Demon Emperor. Armor Resilience 45. Energy 50. Specialty Shock Deflection Ability 1st level. Clone Lizard of Scaled Spines evolved 3 times. A Beast Lord with Ancient Origins. Evolution value 7,620 out of 10,000. After returning to the warehouse, he says that external chi increases his power, plus he has Exterminating Flame as his fatal strike, Crimson Flames for long-range attacks, Chi Sense for awareness, and several armors and weapons repelling demons. He begins releasing his aura into his hand, saying that Now he must train collapsing punch, air step, and his control over electricity and lightning. The next day in front of the school, some students were on top of the building, asking if that girl beside the car wasn't Situ Chankian, because apparently even she couldn't resist the charm of a fancy car. Another student asked when the university environment became this bad. Chankian asked the protagonist what they are going to eat since she will pay, and he says he would like seafood. Shortly after, already inside the restaurant, the protagonist starts ordering food and the girl becomes alarmed, saying that the total has already gone beyond 70,000, as she had only planned for 10,000, and that amount is equal to 3 months of her housing and allowance expenses. With no other choice, she says she only brought 10,000 and asks if he could lend some money, as she will pay later. The protagonist tells her not to worry about it because he already paid the entire bill and all she has to do is enjoy. Looking at him with admiration, she asks if he really opened a seafood company, because that is amazing. She also heard that he hasn't been going to school often and now understands why, thinking it must be because he is busy working and that entrepreneurs have a special aura. Chen Chu looks at her and says it's not exactly that. The truth is that he hasn't been going to school because he has been busy killing monsters and leveling up, so he hasn't even had time to manage his company. She starts shifting around a bit, confused, asking what killing monsters and leveling up means, and if it's some kind of game. But the food arrives at the table, and she becomes distracted by the size of the crab, losing track of the conversation for a moment. Chen Chu stares at the crab while thinking that if the apocalypse really happens, he doesn't know if he will still be able to enjoy such luxury. They go to a luxury store. Qian waits in line behind him, thinking the protagonist said he wanted to go shopping after eating, but she didn't expect him to buy at LV, especially after spending 80,000 on a meal. Spending another 20 or 30,000 on clothes after that leaves her in disbelief, since she couldn't afford even one of the buttons on his outfit with her 2,000 per month allowance. Chen Chu holds her hand and says they will buy her some clothes now. She becomes shy when he grabs her hand, wondering if he thinks she is easy. After choosing everything they wanted, he says he will take it all and hands the card to the attendant, who is also surprised, thinking he is the same guy from before. The first girl who came with him was already beautiful, but in just 1 month, he managed to find someone even prettier. After paying, Qian holds the clothes she received as gifts and thinks the protagonist just bought $30,000 worth of clothes for her the first time they met and wonders if this is what it means to spend money like water. But she also becomes a bit nervous, wondering if he will want to take her to a hotel next time, and starts thinking about what she should do. Meanwhile, in a nearby gym, a demon suddenly appears and the protagonist senses it. He turns to her and says he has urgent matters to deal with and that he will send her straight to school. That attitude surprises her, making her think he has no ulterior motives or is taking things slowly. In the end, she thinks she may just be overthinking it. Chen Chu believes a spatial rift occurred nearby and that something is wrong. Sometime later, he reaches the gym, still outside, and observes through the window, thinking that this is the real world. Yet a polluted aura showed up there. He follows the aura into an alley. The demon says that since it has been found, then the one who discovered it must die and begins to attack. But as expected, the protagonist finishes it with just one kick. The system notifies that he eliminated a low-level polluted monster and gained 5 attribute points. Chen Chu feels relieved knowing it was only a polluted being and not a demon like the fungus from last time. Shortly after, Guan arrives at the scene with his students, saying he was planning to use that polluted individual to test his team's hard work. But someone managed to eliminate it first. The girl says that apparently the one who defeated the polluted being is someone extremely powerful who can control fire, and the deputy chief is surprised, asking since when someone who controls flames appeared in the city. Meanwhile, inside his house, the protagonist is watching the news. The reporter says that an immense number of rifts appeared across the world and unfortunately it seems the apocalypse is approaching. He is shocked, realizing that the apocalypse of 99 years has arrived, because in the last 20 years more than 500,000 citizens died on that battlefield. All those people paid for 20 years of peace with their own blood, and because of that they entered an era that belongs to ordinary individuals. Anyone can become extraordinary. He sent all of that to his grandfather, but he feels it's not enough. If he wants more information about the apocalypse, he will have to turn himself in to the city's special department. Meanwhile, deep in the ocean, a fierce battle was taking place. The pet thinks its opponent can turn seawater into heavy water, but even so, it's useless against him. He quickly moves behind his opponent and pierces through its head with his crimson attack, thinking that once he finishes eating that giant whale, he will certainly gain at least 10,000 evolution points. Meanwhile, at the city department, the group of young people was gathered. The boy with glasses says that the person who eliminated that polluted monster yesterday did very well, definitely stronger than anyone there. The blonde says it must be a flame-controlling power and probably just a normal citizen who awakened, and the girl begins to wonder if it was him, because she couldn't do what he did even if she tried. Guan approaches the group of youth saying that an evolved individual was registered that afternoon and asks if they would like to take a look. The girl immediately shouts yes. The protagonist was already prepared, and as soon as everyone arrives, one of the girls points and says, "That's the guy who drives the luxury car at the school." The girl is shocked seeing it's him, and the deputy chief becomes uneasy realizing it truly is. Guan approaches a machine saying that when someone registers their evolution, it means they must go through a test. It will measure their strength and speed, and the protagonist says he has no problem with that. Lee explains that this is what they use to measure power, and it can display up to 15,000 tons of force, so he can strike with all his power when instructed. The red-haired guy asks Lee how strong he thinks that guy is and how many stars he would be, and Lee emphasizes that the protagonist eliminated a polluted monster last night, so he's stronger than any of them. He would definitely be at least 3 stars. The black-haired girl says she'd rate him 4 stars, but the redhead says that's impossible because that would mean he'd need to land a punch of over 5,000 kilos. Lee says the protagonist is showing so much confidence that it looks like he's going to break the testing equipment, and another guy says they must be joking because their captain is an evolved 5-star individual and he only has 10,000 kilos of strength. As soon as the signal is given, the protagonist throws a punch that causes a deafening sound, and the machine registers more than 12 tons. People can't believe it, saying that not only is he 5 stars, he is a strong 5-star. Chen Chu thinks he tried to control himself, but maybe overdid it a bit. Guan is also impressed, saying the protagonist reached the 5-star standard, and now he can receive 50,000 yuan from the city's special department every month. And if he is also willing to join their team, he will be paid even more and promoted to vice chief, and he would also receive a title. However, the protagonist refuses, saying he is used to walking alone. The chief says he expected that and asks if he was the one who eliminated that polluted monster yesterday night. The protagonist says yes, and Guan asks if he also has the power of flames because his power is truly strong, as good as the awakened individuals he has seen before, and with that talent he could be accepted by the god of battle Jiang as a disciple if he joined the department. Chen Chu thinks that this god of battle is considered the limit of human potential, but he believes he cannot accept this, because his giant lizard must remain secret and he has other ways to become strong. He thanks the chief but declines the offer. The department makes an official city announcement, congratulating the first officially registered evolved individual, Chen Chu, male, 21 years old, evolution level 5, extraordinary strength, blood-colored flame, currently ranked first among all evolved civilians. People begin commenting on the post amazed, asking if there is really a 5-star evolved, saying it's too overpowered. In other places, the maximum is 3 stars, and that's why City N is the best. Some people are even calling him a god and study at the same school as he does. As soon as Tianrui sees the post, he calls the protagonist asking if he's really a 5-star individual and still ranked first, telling him to take care of him in the future, and the protagonist just laughs. After hanging up, he throws the phone on the table, saying that even classmates he hadn't spoken to in years called to congratulate him, and that he received calls from even more people. He starts laughing, thinking this must be what it feels like to be a god living among humans. Meanwhile, after finishing eating that giant whale, his pet has reached 90 meters in length, and his physical strength increased by 1,800 points, and his power rose from 29 tons to 70 tons. He keeps smiling because with his external covering, he could even withstand a piercing bullet. And compared to another evolved individual, he is at least level 7 or 8. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.